All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Board on Thursday, January 21st, 2016. This is our 15th meeting of fiscal 2016. My name is Emily Ennis. I'm the chair, and I'm going to have the other members introduce themselves.
Alex Whiteside, member.
Michael Kelly, member.
William Clark, Planning Director.
Julia Getman, clerk.
Tim Serwinski, Assistant Town Planner.
Brian Furs, member.
Cheryl Tagayas, member.
So we have a lot on our agenda today, but before I run through the agenda, I just want to announce the results of our previous meeting. Unfortunately, the sound was lost on that, so just want to go over the actions that we took because it was quite a busy meeting. So there are 3 articles that relate to zoning for February 8th, and on those articles, for the changes to 3N, the Planning Board voted to add language recommended by Town Council and to recommend that Town Meeting adopt these changes. For the changes to 3J, we voted to recommend that Town Meeting adopt the changes. And for the Parkway PUD article, we voted to recommend that Town Meeting send the article back to the Planning Board for further study. I met with the Warrant Committee after that, and they have voted a no recommendation at this time and are hoping that we will use the time to work with the proponents, and that topic is on our agenda for today. We also voted to send to the Board of Selectmen for inclusion on the warrant for the May ATM an article allowing bed and breakfasts in the town. And we voted to request that a line item be added to our budget for consultant services to implement the recommendations of the master plan and to request $15,000 under the fiscal 2017 contingent budget. And as we discussed at that meeting, I expect that we will be continuing to discuss the budget throughout the budget process. And finally, I announced that I would not be running for re-election and that I will step down as chair at our February 11th meeting to allow the new chair to go through the warrant and budget process prior to the May ATM. So tonight's schedule, which is very full, we have our next meeting dates, which will be February 8th. We're going to meet right before the special town meeting, February 11th, and then that is part of our regularly scheduled, so we're back to the normal schedule, which we skipped in January. So it's the 11th, the 25th, the 10th, the 24th, and the 14th, 10th of March, 24th of March, and 14th of April. And on February 11th at 7 o'clock, we're going to start with an executive session with Town Council to discuss current litigation. And then we'll start our regular meeting at 8 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock. And our first order of business after citizens speak will be the reorganization. So tonight we have citizens speak, new business, public hearing at 7:15 for a definitive subdivision plan on 33 to 41 Pleasant Street, 7:45 an amended site plan approval for Fuller Village, and then old business, the Master Plan Implementation Committee recommendations, zoning articles for both the February STM and the May ATM, and discussion potentially of the zoning process. Now tonight we have had a request to take up the Parkway PUD. The proponent has another commitment, and so we're going to jump in with Mr. Corcoran now and then open the meeting at 7:15 for the public hearing and then jump back and forth a little bit. I let Mr. Corcoran know that he would at least be able to make a presentation as to what's going on from their perspective, but we may not be able to do our discussion and vote within his schedule. So Ned, I'm going to recognize you and we will jump to, is there anybody here for Citizen Speak? All right, so then you are good to go.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the chairman's indulgence. I have a flight to catch at 9:15 this evening to fly to Georgia and watch my son graduate from airborne training.
Congratulations to your son.
And given the weather conditions today, I think I'm going to get to see him jump his final jump tomorrow morning. So it's pretty exciting. But as you indicated in your intro, Emily, the Warrant Committee did vote to no recommendation on the article as it had been presented, pending what I hope would be our ability to negotiate new language. I know I shared copies with all of you. I received comments through Tim from you and from Alex. I have adopted substantially all of both sets of comments, and prepared a red line draft that I sent back to Tim and I think have been shared with you. I can walk through the specifics of that. I think the comments really respond to comments that I heard from members of the board, in particular, that they think in general the approach to the redevelopment of the site at the 487 Blue Hills Parkway is a good one. But as I had indicated, in my effort to thread the eye of the needle with a fairly thick rope, I cast a fairly wide description over a fairly narrowly defined site plan. And the purpose of redrafting was really to nail down the specifics of that site plan, and I think I've captured it pretty well. If you'd like, I could go through the red line with you specifically and identify the changes, or we can talk, I can put it to comments or questions, and however you'd like to proceed on that.
Let me ask two questions. So has everybody had a chance to look at the red line? I know we got it midweek, which makes it a little bit more difficult. So, okay, and then the other thing is I believe you held a meeting yesterday, so I think maybe an update on that
Sure.
first, and then we'll see how the time goes. We do have the public hearing at 7:15, but I'm not seeing anybody other than Paul for it yet, so we'll play it a little bit by ear. So.
I actually have had a couple of things. We met with the Conservation Commission on Tuesday evening on an informational basis. I think that one was televised, and we received a very warm welcome from the commission. They liked the approach to the development. They liked the approach to engaging, creating an opportunity for to open up access to the Pope's Pond Conservation Area to the rear of the property, and we talked a little bit about the nature of stormwater management and those specific details that they would be concerned with, and they thought that the approach to the way that we've set back parking in buildings was a good one. The green space to the rear. I don't have a large plan with me, unfortunately, but you know, there's a tray of parking that's on that northerly boundary, set back 5 feet from property that's owned by, that's under their jurisdiction. They indicated, they understood that it's actually quite a ways from wetlands delineated on the abutting property. They said just berm it, treat it carefully, and obviously when we get into, if and when we get into specific site planning, we will detail how we would manage the stormwater process with them. But with that understanding, they were excited about the notion that there would be an opportunity to open up access to the Pope's Pond Conservation Area, make some improvements to the walking path back there. And generally, I think, you know, they didn't take a specific vote, but the comments were favorable. Last night, we conducted a meeting. I invited 160 town meeting members, essentially all town meeting members who are not elected, otherwise elected officials, living to the west of Randolph Avenue. I took the assumption that if you lived east of Randolph Avenue, you really weren't at all in the sort of physical bullseye from a traffic and other perspective, but specifically wanted to make sure that all of the town meeting members more proximate to the property had a chance to engage and be heard. Approximately 35, 40 people showed. I expected more, given the discussions at the warrant committee and at the last meeting. Senator Joyce was there. The state representative was there. There were a number of people who were very supportive, some who, quite frankly, was surprised for the support, given prior zoning efforts and positions that they've taken. But the support was really around the scale and scope of the development, the need for new tax revenue, the fact that there's really little direct neighborhood impact, and so we're willing to support it. There were several, including Senator Joyce, who urged that we take our time and that we think more about a May town meeting process. Unfortunately, and as I explained to them, people last night, the McKean family is at a point where they've expended a significant amount of money on site planning, legal fees, hearings, process, and they really they can't expend significantly more money to massage what we have between now and May. And so they're at the position where they really do need town meeting to vote yes or no in February in order for them to move on. There was a request, for example, to take what was a high-level overview of the traffic, for which we paid several $1,000s, and turn it into a full-scale traffic study in order to detail and understand all of the very specific traffic impacts that might arise on the side streets. Similar to what was done during the Temple, prior to the Temple rezoning. That's $20,000 plus, and it doesn't justify, in our opinion, it doesn't justify that expenditure to get to the starting line to see if you can get through a rigorous process. I think that that is more appropriate for the site planning process, would certainly be required as part of the special permit process and part of discussions with DCR, but I don't believe ought to be necessary for the purpose of creating an overlay for this property. And so there was some, a little bit of debate about that. There was no direct opposition, and I'm just speaking generally, there was no direct opposition to the proposed reuse. The opposition was really about the speed, how quickly we've come through, how fast we're trying to get to a determination about whether we can go forward or not, and it was simply that. And so, given that, and given where I understand the McKeans to be, I am asking, obviously I'm asking this planning board to consider the proposed amendments as they've been drafted. I'll ask the warrant committee for a favorable recommendation, and we intend to ask the town meeting for a favorable vote on February 8th, and we'll live with the outcome. They'll move on to other things if they have to.
You've got about 2 minutes before we have to at least open the public hearing. Can you just give quick highlights, and then what I'm going to do is we'll open the public hearing, check with the people who are here about how they feel about giving you a few extra minutes, and then go from there. But if you want to give some highlights of the changes, I think.
Sure. The highlights of change was really designed to be much more specific to the development that's been proposed. So we make certain, in the first paragraph, that we're talking about a food market, and the food market as the primary business use. We say that the food market shall occupy at least 60% of the ground floor space, so that it is intended to be seen as the anchor. Other uses will be maybe adjustable and fungible, but they would be really focused around that anchor. We increase the amount of open space, the minimum amount of open space, from 25 to 30%. We cut down on the proposed height of buildings from 2.5 stories to 1.5 stories, and from 35 feet to 30 feet. I think that's certainly reasonable, given the volume of activity would be on a large footprint, with perhaps some second floor business activity. We've defined more clearly the building and parking setbacks. We're very carefully setting the buildings back from both the parkway and from the rear, and paying attention to setbacks from the residential abutter. And so the give, if at all, on setbacks is on that northerly side where there is no direct abutter, where there's town land as a direct abutter, but no wetlands directly proximate abutting the property. We talk about parking setbacks, as I said, being at least 60 feet off of the front and 50 feet off of the residential area. Do say that if we say that we can build it in more than one, the large building would be the anchor building. If there is a second building, if there's not a second building, then the footprint that's available for the second building would be available for parking if we were parking for a larger main building. Otherwise, staying out of the green space.
All right, so I'm going to open the public hearing for 33 to 41 Pleasant Street. Paul, you're here to speak. Do you mind giving us another 15 minutes? And sir, are you going to speak as well, or do you mind another 15 minutes And if we finish earlier, we'll go straight into you guys and then, okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
All right, so you've got till 7:30.
So we've reduced the lot coverage floor area ratios to be much closer to what we actually showed on the site plan. The lot is 89,250 square feet. With 15% lot coverage, we would have a maximum of 13,388 feet. And we would say 20% floor area ratio would get you to 17,850. It's generally what we've been showing. It's a little bit more than what we've been showing on the plan. Gives a little bit of flexibility for the size of market that may result. We're really hoping for a market that's closer to 10,000 than the 6,000 that we've been talking about. And so that's the floor area calculation. Clean up a little bit of language about the dumpsters and deliveries. Made some modifications to the, in section 4D, addressing the windows and the primary ground floor of the facade of the ground floor, so that at least 50% of the windows, of the first floor windows in the retail buildings would have, would be glassed. Technical modifications to dark sky compliance and the ability in 4G that there be no visible light overspill, not only to adjoining residential properties, but also the conservation area or the parkway. Pretty clear from a number of comments I've heard from Senator Joyce and from others that the parkway is we've always known it's a special thing. It is, it's part of the park system, and it needs to be treated as such. With respect to site design criteria, we highlight the need to respect the property's relationship to both the parkway and the conservation area, not just other built environment. Open space is obviously an integral part of the development, and they need to be designed so that they present an attractive appearance from the parkway and an attractive streetscape for the property, for the parkway, so that it relates both for the appearance from the parkway in as it relates out. There is a stand of existing mature trees. They are pines and red oaks. We need to take the question marks out of B, and that they need to be preserved at all possible under this development. And that green space, that beautiful green space in the front of the property with those trees needs to be treated as an important connection between the property and the parkway. We adopted language suggested about low-impact design techniques with stormwater management, with stormwater to be retained on-site and not allowed to flow directly into the conservation resource area. Certainly a goal that the Conservation Commission expressed the other night. Lighting was added with respect to bicycle storage in 5D. We adjusted the size and the purpose of a freestanding sign at the front, that it would only announce the name of the development and it would be shrunk considerably. We reduced the size from 9 feet maximum height to 4 feet maximum height, and from 12 feet maximum width to 5 feet maximum width, with a maximum area reduction of 72 square feet to 20 square feet.
And I noticed you added language about including DCR in the discussions, and some technical language at the end about filing procedures, amendments, expiration, et cetera.
Right.
So I'm wrapping up because it's 20 past.
Okay.
And,
So that's the
any-
overview.
Okay, good.
And questions or comments?
All right, so let me explain to the board that there is no requirement that we reopen our vote. I asked Ned here because the warrant committee had hoped that we would continue the conversation and see if there was a way that we could, if we so wished, come to agreement. But it is up to the members. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this at this point? Alex?
Well, I think that the developer addressed the issues that were raised at the public hearing. And there was a significant amount of support expressed for the development at the public hearing. And what has happened with the zoning is, in my view, it's likely to guarantee that what has been put on the table is what would eventuate. And I understand that it's quick. There's no question that it's quick, but there's been a lot of process in a short period of time. And I'm, given the fact that I don't have more changes to recommend to Mr. Corcoran. So I think that the time is probably right for the town meeting to consider this.
Okay. Mike, any comments on your end? I'll ask for a motion in a little bit. I just want to check in with everybody. Okay. Brian, anything on your end?
No.
No? All right. I do appreciate that the work that you've done to address the comments that were brought up, both pro and con. I think there were some concerns that were mentioned. I think you've addressed a lot of them. I actually had one of the people who spoke at the public hearing call me with some of the concerns. And some of them, as I said, you've addressed. Some of them are that balance between the special permit, what's required for the special permit, and what's required for the zoning, which you've already addressed. So I would look to a motion from a planning board member, somebody who voted in favor of the previous one, which is all of us, a planning board member on how they want to deal with this.
Well, the motion would be to recommend the warrant committee. Well, to recommend, if this revision gets before town meeting, I would move that the planning board advise the town meeting that we recommend it. We recommend its adoption. And we can also, as a secondary recommendation, recommend to the warrant committee that insofar as they find this to be within the scope of the original article, and since the original article was so broad, and this has narrowed it significantly, it probably is within the scope, and it probably is something the warrant committee could recommend.
So I think I hear you saying that you're moving to reopen the matter, to recommend to the warrant committee that if these amendments are within the scope, then we recommend that they approve these amendments, and that we recommend that town meeting vote in favor of this language. Am I correct in that tripartite recommendation?
They revise, in their recommendation, they include the revised version.
Okay. Do I have?
But the rest of what you were suggesting was right on the money.
Fabulous. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
No.
And we have one abstention. Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you.
Okay. All right, so we are going to move on to 3341 Pleasant Street. Mr. Corcoran, have a safe trip. Mr. Sullivan, you may come forward, and thank you for your patience. So this is a public hearing. I'm going to read the process for the public hearing. We're going to have a report from staff on outstanding items and any new information received. We'll get an update from the applicant on those outstanding items. We'll then have questions from board members, testimony from the members of the public, and I'll read those rules when we get to it. And then we will identify any outstanding items for the next meeting. So, Mr. Clark, if you would update us on where we are and what we've received, that would be helpful.
At the last hearing for this project, the stormwater stormwater plan had to go back out for a second round of peer review comments. Those comments came back, kind of a long wait for them, but they came back. There were some more questions that came in yesterday. At the same time, I have comments back from Mr. Celeberti, the proponent, that how he's addressing the comments that Lisa Eggleston brought forward. There are still 3 items that need to be answered. The engineer for the applicant has been away on vacation, so there are 3 pieces that are missing. There is one other that there seems to be a bit of a difference between the project engineer and the peer review engineer. We'll let the town engineer either let him reach the determination of which one to accept. And that has to do with the Storm Tech MC 4500 detail about wrapping the system in, either wrap it or don't wrap it. As for the calculations, CAC is accepting the calculations. They'll be put into the new application being brought forward. The question about the inspection and maintenance pieces will be added to the O&M plan, the operation and maintenance plan. The only piece that I don't have is I have been hearing comments from the abutter to lot number 9 and his lawyers, that none of that has been resolved at this time. To that's where we are.
All right. Sullivan.
Good evening. My name is Paul Sullivan, Smith Road, Milton. I think I'll start off with Lot 9. We've actually decided to eliminate that from the subdivision plan for now. We've labeled it as not a buildable lot for the purposes of this plan and don't intend to seek approval from the planning board during this process. I'd just like to go through briefly some of the things we have changed and addressed from comments from John Thompson and others.
One question, Paul.
Sure.
What is the revision date of the latest plan? Because I don't have anything with a really recent revision date.
December 10th.
Yeah, I believe it's December 10th. Is,
Okay, it's marked, the one we had in our packets is marked September 10th.
And really, if you turn around, there's a
turn around.
really small date on the
Ah.
bottom underneath the seals.
What?
Actually, you can tell by Lot 9 if that language is on Lot 9.
Oh, I see where it is, right next to the seal. Yep,
Yeah, where's
and
stamp?
handwritten, yeah.
This is stamped January 21.
Yeah, it should be 12/10, right? That's the thing.
Yeah, I got 2 plans. I don't have that one.
It's on the board behind you.
Oh. Should have warned me so I could scoot out of the way.
Is this in your way?
No, but am I in your way? All right.
You can have
Okay,
this.
Paul, so go ahead and
Bill.
walk us through it.
Bill, you want to pass it? You can take mine.
Alex.
Sure. So as I said, Lot 9, we've eliminated that from this process for now. And some of the other issues that come up, some of them from an older letter from John Thompson that was at the beginning of the process. It was an October 22nd letter. I just want to go through those quickly. One of them was the sewer pipe was less than 2% slope. We've adjusted that. That's been addressed. There's been, the sewer and water is 10 feet of separation in the easement and in any locations on the road itself. They John had requested that at the end of the water main be a cap nipple for future tie-in by the town. That's been incorporated into the plan. the developer agreed to the conditions that John requested regarding Lot 9, but right now it's not part of this process any longer, so. The plans were submitted to the fire department. We have not heard any requests for any changes to be made, so we assume that the hydrant location is satisfactory to them.
Mr. Clark, you want to just confirm that verbally?
There's 2 fire hydrants. One will be in the middle of the subdivision road. The other will be, I believe it's at the end over on Lot 9.
Yes, that's right, yeah, right at the corner of the property, the town property, which is called,
Right there.
yes, that's it. So we haven't heard anything back that the fire department has any concerns, the chief. The specification on the drainage pipe is now HDPE per John's suggestion. The third-party peer review is ongoing with Lisa Eggleston. And the final thing was John made a comment about whether the lane should be private or public, and the developer's preference is to keep it private, so the homeowners association can maintain the drainage system. And then regarding the peer review, drainage peer review, and Lisa Eggleston, we have the following comments. On the first item that she brought up, we've agreed to, the developers agreed to make the necessary calculations, including water quality, recharge volume calculations will be added to the stormwater plans. And on item 2, it has to do with O&M plan. It's on sheet 7. It actually has, I don't know if she has an older plan, but the most current plan has a pretty detailed maintenance plan for the drainage, the entire drainage system and its components. And we also will add this information to the HOA documents for the homeowners' maintenance. As Mr. Clark said, the engineer's been on vacation, so he hasn't had a chance to address items 3, 4, and 5. We don't believe 6 requires any comment from us. On item 7, he's going to incorporate 1 foot of stone underneath the systems per the peer review request. And then, as Mr. Clark said, they're willing to remove the non-woven geotech-style fabric from underneath this StormTech system, but the manufacturer specification requires it. So he's worried about the warranty on the product. And then we also added, regarding some landscaping along the street, there's been some additional plants shown at the entranceway and then along Pleasant Street. As you can see, we colored up all the recharge systems for, there was a series of test holes were performed for the locations of all the proposed recharge systems for each individual home. And I've highlighted them in blue, you can see in the plan. And so that's, that should be fine. And finally, one of the things that had come up, we addressed the frontage issue on Lot 4. That's been corrected.
Okay.
Changed the lot line, and we've added the snow storage area at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Questions from board members?
A question.
Yes. You're
The
ready.
recharge for each individual lot, is that picking up surface drainage or roof drainage or both?
Yeah, it's roof leader. Will all be connected to those Cultec systems.
And does it pick up any surface drainages, or is that all going to?
It's all roof. systems that's being recharged.
So it's the responsibility then of each homeowner to maintain that, and to install that when they actually build the home? Because otherwise we wouldn't know exactly where to put it, is that right?
Yeah, so I guess, right now, the developer's intending to build the homes, so that will resolve the issue.
Okay.
And part of the homeowner association will discuss the details of a maintenance program for those Caltech systems that are on the individual homes. If he sells the lot off, I guess that he'd need to attach something to the deed so that the homeowner would know what needs to be constructed.
Other questions? Alex?
What kind of street trees are they? How big?
It's a good
And who was supposed to do that? Someone was it me?
We did discuss that.
We did
Yeah, actually-
discuss it. I think Brian sent us, didn't you send us a link to
The
Boston's?
Boston street trees.
trees? Yeah.
How big should they be? Same as in Boston?
I'm not sure what Boston's caliper is. What did we say the other day? Cheryl?
4.
4? We were suggesting 4-inch caliper for our non-conforming business use proposal that's coming up, and that would be measured from 4.5 feet from the base, which is the typical height. What did they call that's called? I forget what they called it, but that's the caliper height measurement.
We have to replace some on the DCI property in Jamaica Plain. They have to be 6-inch.
6.
Sycamore maple is 6-inch caliper.
What kind of maple they letting you put in?
Sycamore maple.
Well, obviously,
questions?
6 inches is better than 4 inches.
Other questions? Yes.
On the recharge systems that are for the individual lots, was there any consideration given to having those be retention instead of detention for the standpoint of irrigation or watering? And is that an option?
I'm not sure, I'd have to check with the engineer. Right now, we're just recharging the groundwater, is the way the system works.
So you're talking about capturing the rainwater and using it for irrigation.
Other questions? Alex?
I think that there's no real reason to put the 33-foot passageway on the plan, but if you do put it on the plan, I think that you should refer to it as what it is, a 33-foot unbuilt right-of-way. Because it is referred to as a right-of-way in the deeds. I don't, whether
Yeah, we'll change that language back to a row.
to
Not
30,
sure whether it's-
33-foot unbuilt
Unbuilt right-of-way.
right-of-way.
All right. Other questions?
I guess, just going back to the street trees for a minute, I guess I'd ask the board if we're comfortable using the Boston tree list as a standard with a caliper defined and allow the developer to choose.
Well, let's have a quick look at the, can everybody read that?
I mean, Sycamore and, what was the other one?
That's the only one we were replacing.
It was just Sycamores? Didn't they
Sycamore
give you a
maple.
choice?
No.
Oh, it was Sycamore Maple is
Sycamore,
what they said.
interestingly, isn't even on this list.
Yeah, I know. I was just noticing that.
Oh, it's a
Yeah.
replacement.
So it's a replacement tree, you're saying?
Yeah.
What
Oh,
just
okay.
there, I think.
I gotcha.
Kentucky coffee tree.
Maybe
That's
it's a
new one on
plain
me.
tree you have.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with any of these trees. Can you scroll back up a bit for a sec, please? Thank you, Tim.
How are they defining
I don't know if you wanted-
wire and medium?
Well, they have,
Underwire being underwire, which wouldn't apply to this site because everything's
Yeah.
running underground.
so,
Oh, I see
So it
that.
would be a medium to tall
Okay,
species.
yeah.
that's what I wanted to know, is did we want to specify whether it was a small species
I
or the
would
medium to
suggest
tall?
Underwire should only be if it's underwire.
Okay, so medium to tall species. I don't have a problem with choosing these on the list.
6-inch caliper, 4
Yeah.
feet above the ground.
6-inch caliper, yeah. 4 feet, 4.5 feet?
4.5 feet was the
4.5
height
feet.
that they use as the standard
Okay,
height.
so this
they
is a
call it.
medium to tall on the Boston list. 6-inch
You should just make a
caliper.
note that perhaps we adopt this as a standard as well.
We should put that in there so the next time the question comes up. All right, any other questions from board members? If not, I'm going to
that's a good question.
open this up for any public comments. Paul, if you'll step back for a moment. So these are the rules for public comments. Please wait to be recognized before speaking. Come to the table and give your name and address and speak into the microphone. When you're done, please leave the table. All questions or comments must be directed to the chair. Speakers may not cross-examine applicant, board members, or other speakers. Applicant will be asked to respond to questions at the end of the public input session unless they're excessively complicated. Hang on, let's open it to the public and then you get first right
This is
up.
just procedural.
Yes.
As to what the time for decision is.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So do we know, Bill? It's 135 days from submission?
Unless they
is.
give us an extension. How close are we?
I don't know.
Ah, that would be a good thing to
Let's
find
get
out.
an extension.
Yes. All right, so does anybody wish to speak on this public hearing? All right. Seeing none from the public, hang on, we're going to go back to identifying the outstanding items for the next meeting, one of which had probably better be an extension. Bill, you had your hand up.
Did.
Yeah.
On the piece about number 2,
Yeah.
and his comment about this stuff is on number 7. I understand what Lisa's talking about, and it would make more sense to add to the O&M plan a sheet that just shows the house locations, the roadway, and the drainage, and then it can have the different kinds of drainage that are on there without having to complicate it with the gas, the sewer. It's supposed to be just for the cleanup of the stormwater system. It would make it much cleaner, much clearer, and then you can add in the pieces about what they may look like when they open up that particular cover. But showing where the covers are need to be on that standalone page.
Is that not reference to number 2? Of Eggleston's memo?
2 from
She's saying-
Ken
She's
Bouchard.
recommending a separate document.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I'm saying
That-
yes.
I would
Paul's
agree
saying
with
no, page 7 would do that.
Recommend
I don't think
Yeah.
page 7 does
Makes
that. I
it
think
easier to see.
yes.
Yeah, do
It
that.
needs to be a clean page with just the system on it.
Yeah.
Putting some of these systems, like when they open the hole, this is what it will look like, but that's okay. But where are those covers?
Do we have an application date?
So from submission of the application or from the opening of the public hearing?
Application date.
Application.
And the public hearing was opened on October 22nd.
We have this on 9/15, this application for approval of a subdivision.
Okay.
Is that the date on the application or the date on the stamp?
The stamp is October 6th.
Okay, so 135 days from
The
October
clerk-
6th.
The clerk got it.
All right,
Got my little day app here.
Brian's getting us that date. So,
Comment?
October
It's just-
6th?
yes,
We're still waiting on calculations.
yes. So the question is, do we need to get the applicant to give us an extension to at least our next meeting to hear back from both engineers, which I think would make sense, as we should have the engineer back from vacation and just follow up on those 3 items that were outstanding. So let's just check our dates.
So February 18th is 135 days.
Okay, so that would cover us to our next meeting. Other than
But then we're
stormwater,
going to probably have to write something, so.
we will, but,
Let's not take the chance we're going to forget.
all right. So would you be willing to give us a 60-day extension on that 135-day clock to cover hearing from your engineer and then writing anything, assuming the board is, or at least a 30-day extension at this point?
Yes, 30 days
Okay.
is fine. I just will let you know on the record that the developer is under pressure on his agreement with the landowner that he needs to hopefully bring this to a conclusion, so.
Well, that brings us to my next question, which is, as far as board members are concerned, is there anything else outstanding other than the stormwater?
Well, the condo
we-
documents.
Okay, so condo documents.
I think we
I thought
submitted-
you'd given us something. I had where did it go? Jill Kathleen Lane Homeowners Association Trust?
they-
Yeah, so we have that to review. We got it on the 23rd of November. So,
Okay.
anything else? Condo documents, stormwater?
We'll actually go review that too, because there's some issues that come up since then that we
Okay.
probably need to add into the homeowners
I
documents.
mean, in the past, sometimes we've said town council has to approve these things, but, and I expect that we'll say the same thing, but we should probably take a look at them.
Yep, I think that's fair.
Can we get sheet 4? Can you add species to the trees?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
can you, can we have a commitment that, other than the trees that are marked with an X, all efforts will be made to protect other existing trees until
Sure,
such, especially until such time that the houses are actually built on those sections, so that we don't end up with surface drainage issues, not clearing the site in advance of construction of the home.
Yeah.
And then an enlargement of the entrance landscape, just so we can see that a little bit.
Yeah, we blow that up
Blow
so you
that
can
up.
see what it
Okay.
looks like, sure.
Okay, so let me just check at this point. I have revised condo docs are outstanding. Sheet 4, adding the species to the trees and a commitment to protect existing trees. A clean sheet with the home locations, the street and the drainage. Answers to the stormwater questions, enlargement of the entrance detail. Anything else?
Were you looking just to enlarge the area or an elevation to see what it looks like heading in there?
Just enlarged plan is okay, as long as a little more detail is called out. The size of area that we're looking at, the quantity of plant material,
Sure.
that sort of thing.
Okay.
Anything else outstanding?
I think we should be able to get this
Okay. So assuming we all have all of
done
that,
quickly.
we should be able to proceed to a vote on the 11th, assuming all that material is in.
The calculations are beyond our control. But
Well, but that's what I'm saying, is if he's got everything into us, then we should be able to do that. Anything else for this? All right. In that case, we're going to continue this to February 11th at 8:15, because we're starting an hour later.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Yep. We're starting at 7, but the public meeting is starting an hour later. I saw the look of confusion on people's faces. No, not getting off that easy. All right, so it is 7:47 p.m. We have our second public hearing for amended site plan approval from Fuller Village. And I'm going to read the public hearing process as the representatives come forward. We'll have a report from staff introducing this project. The applicant will make their presentation, and we'll have questions from board members. Then we'll have testimony from any members of the public who wish to speak, and I'll read the rules at that time. And then we will identify any outstanding items for the next meeting if there are any. So,
Madam Chair, we're just waiting Bob Sheffield's up at Board of Appeals.
oh, okay, do you want
I
to?
just texted him, he should be down in a minute.
All right, so what we'll do is we've opened it on time, that's fine. We'll have a report from planning staff while we wait for him to come down, putting them on the spot, and then as soon as he comes down, we'll switch over to you. So, Bill, Tim, you can choose which one of you wants to let us know how the planning department's doing these days.
The much-anticipated reformatting of the zoning bylaw is continuing apace.
Fantastic.
We've been working on that. Doing work for the Traffic Commission. We just met today, doing some parking studies in East Milton Square. I have Julia and myself went out in early December to do some what do we call turnover counts to see how long cars are being parked in the various lots and streets in East Milton. We have one of the traffic engineers from MAPC that's doing the analysis on that data. So we'll have some good information about what's going on in the square.
That's actually done in conjunction with, at the same time we're doing the East Milton parking deck project. For as much as we're looking to add in 37 new spaces, redevelop the green space, we need to know what the turnover rate is in the commercial area, and that's what Tim is looking at. At the same time, we're looking at any and all parking resources down in that area.
We'll be heading down to Brockton next week for a lighting workshop.
Oh, good, I'm
so
glad
that'll
somebody's
be-
going to that.
Yeah.
Great.
I think that invitation went out, so I've never been to Brockton before, so I'm excited.
You're in for a treat.
And when is I mean, I'm very interested in the count of parking spaces. When is that likely to be ready and?
So next week, we'll have some analysis from MAPC.
Okay.
So I can come back if there's time on the 11th, just sort of go over, what some of the findings are.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sounds good. What else?
I sent you a invitation from Citizen Training Planning Collaborative about the, I want to say the 16th. It's the third weekend in March, third Saturday in March. It's an all-day event out at Holy Cross. I do know that we've had people go, we've had people teach at it. It is something that is, I think everybody learns something from it.
I've found it very valuable the years that I've gone. So,
Alex went last year or the year before?
Yes.
I don't remember which one either, I know. Good answer. So, I mean, everybody's taken a shot going out there. It is quite interesting.
Okay.
The other is just the amount of paperwork and the review to these different projects.
You put a project, upcoming project, as it were, in our packet for today. So the extension for the 545 Adams Street will be coming before us in a few.
Dunkin' Donuts is looking
Meetings,
to do a site plan approval. They're looking to redo their front doors, the front door, the back door. They want to add a cooler to the back of the building. They are looking to redo the entire inside of the building. So right now, if you drive by on Adams Street, the counter faces the street. The new plan will take and turn it 90 degrees so that it'll go front to back. We don't have, you won't see the plans for the inside, you'll only see the plans for the outside, because that's site plan approval. The building commissioner is right now going through the plans for the interior of the building. We didn't do the review, it literally just came in about 11 o'clock this morning,
Hot off the presses.
hot off the press.
Yeah, don't get married to these plans. There may be changes.
There will be a couple of minor things, like the door details, a little confusing. We'll ask for them to blow those up. Parking issue is already answered the first time around. All this is a redo of what's there.
Any other projects coming up in front of us within the next month or two? We've had a spate that we've been closing off, and we've been focusing on zoning. So is there anything new coming our way?
We've been watching, we've been taking and reviewing the different comments that come in, the different versions. I know the sign stuff is keeping us on our toes. The three of us have all taken shots at that zoning rewrite. Tim is in I think the last part of formatting it, because the indents are not where they're supposed to be. They
The
have a
joys
mirror.
of Word.
It'll look nice.
The mirror, it is a mirror effect so that one page shifts over, and when you start to type, it brings it with it to the next page. The titles on the top just don't, it'll say section 3 and you're actually in section 6, trying to keep all the sections. And just so that we're not alone, Tim actually went to MAPC yesterday, and one of the subjects was recodification and rewrite of your zoning bylaws. We're not alone. There's other groups doing the same thing, having the same issues. So
Everything about it is difficult, no matter how easy you try to make it. One thing, actually, I'm looking at my calendar. The Affordable Housing Trust, along with the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance, is going to actually be hosting a first-time homebuyer education course the first 2 weeks of March. So March 7th, 10th, 14th, and 17th. And that's first-time homebuyers. You go through the course, you get the certificate. You can take it anywhere in the state to get all sorts of either mass housing partnership or mass housing finance agency goodies in terms of affordable loan terms and whatnot. So if anyone wants to go, I don't have the link on me or whatever, but you can sign up on the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance website. That's going to be in the beginning of March. It's a very popular course. A lot of people like to take it. I'll be taking it, I think, and also running the projector. So that'll be good. And that's going to be in the Keys room at the library. Check social media. We'll be putting it up on the town Facebook page. It'll be going out. But if you are watching the planning board meeting, you have a distinct advantage over other people because you can go sign up right now.
you're gonna bring that to the home program when you go
Yep.
this month.
Yep.
Milton belongs to the South Shore Home Consortium. It's a HUD-funded program that provides money to Quincy, Braintree, Weymouth, Milton, and Holbrook.
All right.
And there'll be actually, in February, I actually have to get the details, there's going to be a fair housing event to sort of educate people, elected officials, renters, realtors, et cetera, about fair housing. Through the home program, Milton was part of a regional fair housing plan, actually, that's it's a great plan. And one of the action items in the plan is to sort of do these educational events. So that's another thing that, check social media. If you're not subscribed or you don't like the town website or the town page on Facebook, you should go and like it, because we throw a lot of stuff up there.
Good to know. All right, well, while we're waiting, we have a couple of other items on our agenda, so thank you both very much for giving us the update. It's been a while since we've had one, so it's nice to get that. I'm going to propose that we take, because it's first on the list, so why don't we take the Master Plan Implementation Committee recommendations first? We can begin that discussion, and then depending on where we get, we can switch out and come back again once Mr. Sheffield gets down here. So Cheryl, I'm going to put you on the spot.
You are?
Yes, I am, because you are our Master Plan Committee liaison. And I am going to ask you for initial recommendations. I've got them in front of me if you want them.
I'm pulling them out.
Good for you. Okay. And so we should have all gotten applications at our last meeting or just before our last meeting. So hopefully you have names in mind.
So we have 3, is that right?
We have to choose 3, yes. And the idea is that we are jointly appointing these with the Board of Selectmen. So it makes sense for us to come up with our recommendations first, send them to the Board of Selectmen, and they may, of course, be coming up with theirs as well. So Cheryl, did you have a top 3 pick from your review of it?
Just let me
I
take
think
a
that's the
quick-
easiest way of starting.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head, so I need to pull them out.
Yep, have a quick
See.
look, so everybody else can pull theirs out while you're doing the same thing. I'm sorry, I should have given you fair warning, but I thought it was going to be a little bit later in the agenda.
I have a question.
Yes, Alex.
Initially, there was a suggestion that we would have a secret vote, and that someone would then compute the secret ballots and see if we came up with a winner.
Oh, well,
Or 3.
that suggestion had not been made to me, but I think it's a great suggestion. Do you want to, why don't you, yeah, exactly. rip up some paper.
Bit of an old site
We
plan.
can do that, and then we can,
I have, actually, I have right here.
No.
so shall we do our top 3 or top 4 to give more of a chance to?
I think that one should vote for 3.
Do you have,
All right, so,
You might just read the names of the
Not on me.
nominees to make
Yep.
sure we all have the,
have the right names.
The right names.
Yes, and just in case anything came in. So I have, in no particular order, Judy George, Elizabeth Miller, John Cronin, Philip Johanning, Emily Martin, Michael Balfe, and Richard Burke. Did I get them all?
Did you say Elizabeth Miller?
I did say Elizabeth Miller, yes. I think those are all that I have.
Those are the ones that, yeah,
Okay.
we've gotten. I don't think we've gotten any since.
All right, so I'll read them out again just so everybody has them. Judy George, Elizabeth Miller, John Cronin, Philip Johanning, Emily Martin, Michael Balfe, and Richard Burke. And then I think what we should do is actually pass them down to Tim and Julia, and they can,
on one piece of paper,
yes, on one piece of paper, just pass them down to
ripped
Julia.
in half.
That's
Sorry, can you
fine,
just
or
pass
fold it
this down?
over, however you
No,
want.
let's have everyone rip theirs in
I
half.
I have an
Okay.
extra.
What could be
Well, we
great
can have
in
it for a
that?
second ballot if we need to.
Keep that for a second ballot.
Okay.
Pick this guy here. Keep them on their toes.
And then Julia, when you add them up, you can just bring the sheet up to me and I'll have a quick look at them.
We're doing one.
Top 3. The
Top
top
three.
3 and give them to Julia. Well,
Oh, I mix these up with blanks.
Not just me.
and then we will tally them up and talk about it later on.
not me.
So then the other items on our agenda.
Pick me out singularly, dude.
Just double checking. The other items on our agenda are zoning articles, both for May, the non-conforming business use, and the sign article that Alex had put forward, or sign articles, because there's a cluster of them. So anticipating that the non-conforming use may take quite a bit of discussion, I'm going to start off with the signs, Alex, since we have not had that on our
I
agenda
think
before.
that signs is an excellent thing to start off
Oh,
with.
good, I'm glad I have your approval.
Because on June 18th, 2015,
Yes.
the Supreme Court of the United States decided Reed versus Town of Gilbert. And in it, they said, content-based sign bylaws are not going to stand. So if you have a bylaw that says you can have political signs, that's out. If you have a bylaw that says you can do constitutionally protected expression, that's out. If the sign is identified because of its content, it's not going to fly. So you have to, what we'd have to do is devise a sign bylaw which allows signs in certain places of a certain size without in any way saying what's in the sign.
So that would include, because we've seen language before in various drafts, that would include holiday decorations would be
It would
a
probably
content?
I think that I think holiday decorations, it would say Merry Christmas content.
Right. Or, for example, if we've talked about
If you can
signs for advertising. So advertising it becomes the
The
content.
commercial speech is a tremendous problem. Of course, the Supreme Court didn't mention commercial speech, because the Supreme Court had their fun with doing it all in a vacuum the way they do. And the concurrence said, this is going to cause huge problems, and perfectly well-intentioned, well-designed bylaws are going to go down in flames.
Okay.
So Tim identified Reed, and I printed it out and read it. I think the commercial speech, even though they don't mention it, it is a tremendous problem. And I think it would be extraordinarily unwise to try and rush into a Stein bylaw tonight. And I would recommend that I mean, when you said, let's hire a consultant, we need a constitutional lawyer.
Well, there goes that 15,000. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't come cheap.
This is stunning. It is a stunning development, and it is nice to know it in advance, rather than on town meeting floor that have Mr. Chinman stand up again
So I do.
and let us have it.
I do remember that this came up when we were talking about sign bylaws in the fall, and then we ran out of time to deal with that, and so I'd completely forgotten about it till the email came back around again. Tim, you had a comment you wanted to make?
I was asking
I saw
if
you.
there's a fifth ballot out there. I don't know. Did everyone hand in their?
I had.
And did you not pass mine down, Brian?
No, I did not pass Charlotte.
Thank you, Brian.
He looked at your names and he
Exactly.
said, forget about it.
Tim was going to say something constitutionally.
We're waiting for his constitutionally legal opinion.
You don't want to
Voter
hear my
obstruction.
constitutional legal
So then I
opinions.
think,
Don't worry about it.
so I think that what I hear you say is that you're withdrawing these proposed articles, and we'll have a long conversation about them at a later date.
I think that, we could discuss it now, but the parameters of what we've been discussing are so unclear that I will do some more work. I'll see if anyone has tried to figure out what Reed actually allows.
It'd be nice to know if another town has already spent
And that,
significant legal money to do it.
Are you on the
Any other town
planners?
even knows about it.
Ask
Yes.
them if anyone's done anything about Reed versus Gilbert.
I thought it came up on the Mass Planners listserv a little while back. I could go back. I saved some of those messages. I could go back. But I vaguely remember somebody touching on it. It might have been to say, has anybody done anything
I
about
wouldn't
it?
want it.
Don't we really just want to,
I think you need to look at the comments that came in from the sign review committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
are very
some of
For
helpful.
as
Those
much
were
as those
helpful.
comments, Tim was a little, I don't know that I really want to pass those ones out because they were a little,
Candid.
thank you.
Well, I
Candid
asked
is
him-
fine.
I asked
But
him
that's
for
how they
them
talk, and
twice,
that is
So maybe
true.
he felt compelled.
I thought they were very helpful. I mean, if you looked through the,
Yeah.
I think they're common sense
language, I think
articles,
it
the
made
common sense
sense.
language.
I think there are some things that I think, perhaps I hope are outside of that opinion or that ruling, that we can all agree are things that need to be addressed. And I think those are some of the comments that came from the sign committee as well. And
Yes.
that we've heard from citizens, residents, in certain parts
Yeah.
of town. So if, whether it's something that can get decoupled from the language here, that
Are
we can
you
address two
decoupling
different.
illumination? Because
Yes.
you cannot say which sort of signs can be illuminated because that's content-based.
so you just
That's
gonna-
where I'm thinking that this makes more sense to go to October, and that gives us a chance to
You can see it's just a
parse it
mess.
out.
I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't read it, so
So
that's
when
I'm
you- when you-
asking.
when you're talking
Yeah.
about the physical characteristics of the
we're
sign,
gonna
you're
be in a
assigning them to
situation where we
particular
have to
language
basically
signs or particular
distinguish
intent
by
signs.
permanent
Yeah.
and temporary, and that's it?
You can. It's all about location. It's all about area.
Size.
It's all about
Placement.
Placement, yeah. I mean, all the sort of dimensional, locational things are in play. You know, the example that I've heard used is you can't say you can have a drive-through sign. What you can say is you can have a sign of a certain size on a certain size pole next to a driveway. And if
Directional sign.
and if someone wants to, you know,
In a business zone.
yeah, if someone wants to put up a, you know, the planning board is the best sign, they can, but they would probably put a drive-through sign if they're McDonald's or Dunkies or whatever. So you sort of, it's this kind of oblique dance that you have to play through dimensional, locational requirements.
But they do
Okay.
say that there are certain signs, like address signs, that probably are exempt, that you can actually specify them.
You can actually say, you may have an address sign.
You
but
can have an address, or you can, you
A
can.
directory.
You can,
Street sign.
that there are some signs, I mean, there's a concurrence here, and Scalia tries to be helpful for once, and
No editorial comments.
5 television.
but, you know, he says that there are certain signs that you can do, but then you get into the illumination question, and if you say you can do this one but not this one,
Then, right.
and then it would be nice to, and it may be possible to, if we decide that all signs can be illuminated, which I think is probably where we're going.
So does it mean that existing bylaws that are in conflict with that are non-enforceable
No,
now?
it doesn't. It means that they're probably can be set aside. It means that the stuff in them is probably not legal. But they're the bylaw.
And
until
it means that they would be
Until
subject to
somebody
challenge.
contests it.
until
Yeah,
a
exactly.
court says, forget it, you can't enforce these, what does the building and say he's going to enforce them?
So I would say
Obviously, we
this,
need to work on it.
Yeah, I
because
would say this
eventually
needs
we're
more
gonna- Especially now
research.
that we've announced it, it's
You got to
eventually
work
gonna
out
be
the content
challenged.
language.
Yeah,
You got
exactly.
to develop the sign bylaw, even if you want to use content language, and when you're done, go back through it and edit out the content language.
well, and I think what it also means is that we have to take a good hard look at our sign bylaw and see, is this something that can be tweaked, or is it something where we have to do a whole-scale revision? And we won't know that till we have more
Well,
information.
And I won't belabor this, but it seems like you just got to, again, work out the language that refers to the content.
Right, but if you say you can have a 20-square-foot sign
That's
for
all right.
constitutionally expressed, I mean, you have to allow sufficient size signs so that people can express themselves. You can't just
You can't
ban
say
all
that you're allowed
signs.
to have a sign this size, right?
So you have, but we said 20 square feet for constitutionally protected expression, 16 feet for political signs.
Well, those are content-based, though.
Right, exactly, that's
so
what becomes the
Political
problem.
is vote for so-and-so.
So we
Yeah,
can't do that.
But if you say, then you can have 8-square-foot signs or 20-square-foot signs, but you don't say what can go on them, then
That's what they're looking for.
So,
But I
Yes.
think the geography kind of plays into it. I mean, you can have a 6-foot square sign in a residential neighborhood, but in a commercial area, they're obviously going to we would allow bigger signs.
Right, but we can't say what's on them. I mean, so.
We could say in a
sign-
commercial area, it can't be lit. We could say in a residential and a commercial area, it can be lit.
But you're
And then
going to
define how you can light it.
that
and-
some signs in the residential area can and other signs can't. And
Then it
and
starts
then
to
you're
get tricky.
getting into content.
is
So-
there any way, as you're doing your study, you may not know the answer to this, but as you're looking into it further, is there a way we can rely on a guideline as opposed to a bylaw? Can we skin the cat that way? It's just something to think about.
Well, I mean, I was thinking that it
Sounds
was.
like this is a new
I was
revelation.
thinking that it was, I mean, Cheryl said you're giving the selectmen a lot of discretion. But if you give the selectmen a lot of discretion and say, make sure you do it constitutionally,
It's a little unfair to the selectmen to
It's
do
a
that.
little
yes.
unfair.
We're going to tell you can do all of these things, but just make sure it's constitutional, and we'll be over here. It's not very helpful.
Plus, I don't think it's
Maybe
in
they
the-
should write the bylaw.
Will they arrest them if they do something against the guys?
It doesn't address the residents' concerns, residents who have filed the citizens petition and residents who have come before us, before warrant
right.
committee.
Agreed.
Well, it
So I
could
do
complicate
think-
their concern, to be honest with you,
I think
because if
But
it
it-
sets up
it-
the applicants for a
It doesn't
challenge.
mean we're
Yeah.
not thinking about them.
I think they've done themselves a service in just highlighting their concerns, and hopefully the selectmen have heard their concerns.
And unfortunately, the Supreme Court came out with this after they came before us, so it was a wrinkle in what we had said that we would do. I agree, we still need to address it, but we need to have some more information before we can properly address
They
it.
actually came out at the same time, but
Well, the May town meeting,
This-
and this
but
was in, the decision
this
was
was
in
a-
June. I thought you said it was in June.
It was June 18th.
Okay, so town meeting was in May.
yeah, but we knew what was coming.
Oh, okay, I see what
In
you
it.
mean.
How,
We didn't know.
How can you
The board
know?
did not know it was coming.
who knew this?
I had to have the same discussion with you back then, and we knew that what was going to be excluded.
We knew?
We did.
We did?
So you knew there was a
Did.
case before the Supreme Court.
We'll go through this later.
Yeah, don't have this on television.
This is good.
Yes.
Did you talk to Thomas?
No, I talked to you.
Oh, I talked to Thomas.
Okay.
All right, so I think, have we said all we need to
that's
say
great.
on signs for now?
Is it
Alex
clear
is
what
going to
our
look
next
into it.
steps are?
Yeah, Alex is going to look into the legal ramifications and report back to us. We'll keep this on the agenda because it's part of the ongoing. I've asked Julia that we keep the 2016, 2017 zoning process as a permanent agenda item and zoning articles for 2016 as a permanent agenda item. So we'll keep it on the agenda. Alex will report back to us. Let us know how the research goes. And in the meantime, planning staff will also look to see what other towns have been
I've
dealing
got
with.
some resources just about sort of
Great.
some kind of cousin lower court decisions that have come out
Okay.
as a result of this, and also some different interpretations. I think it'd be important, if not next meeting, soon, to talk about sort of an engagement process.
Yeah, and in fact, we can add that to the end of tonight's meeting, depending on how we get. I want to check in with our
Yeah,
public
so-
hearing people.
And
Yeah.
Bob is involved in the Board of Appeals.
So can we
Could we-
get
yeah,
started?
we would
Yes?
love to get
Okay.
started.
Excellent.
Is it-
I just want to make sure that you're good with that.
Experts, and I think we're good.
Great, so let's get started. We've opened it, I've read the rules, so you guys come on forward and we'll go from here. Bill, you're going to present and let us know what's in front of us, and then we'll have you guys talk to it and go on from there.
you have an application for 1399 Blue Hill Ave and 1372 Brush Hill Road. Basically, what's happening here is two different buildings at Fuller Village will have small additions added to them. If you go to the Des Moines building, the Des Moines building. The Gordon House. Oh, she's to the side, all right. Gordon House. Close. The Gordon House dining room is going to be expanded. There is an addition on the back. You will not see it from, I think you might see it from one villa. You won't see it from the rest of the development. The Brush Hill Road project is an expansion right beside the front door going in the main building. Right on the left-hand side, it's to put in a new locker room. And there's nothing here that is triggering any of the neighbors. Actually, we had, I think, one neighbor come in to look at it. We showed her the plan, she's like, done. They just saw it, thought it was going to be bigger, and said, no issue, and walked away. For the particulars, I go right to We'll go to Deborah first, and she can introduce her team. We did review each one of these for site plan approval, make sure that it meets all of what is required
Okay. So it's
in
complete
the zoning.
application, it's
Yes,
met everything,
in the
Tim?
zoning. Go ahead.
I was going to say that this is actually a site plan amendment, because both of these buildings are enabled by two different site plans.
Yep.
And there's actually a third component, was it the Brush Hill or the Blue Hill have with the tot lot?
It's the Brush Hill.
Brush Hill.
So to basically strike some of the language from the Brush Hill site plan about a tot lot.
I think
on-
three of you remember the issue of the tot lot, and I know that Fuller came before the planning board a number of years ago.
It's actually only Alex's was on at the time. It was a while back.
Were you here too?
No, it was right before me.
No, because I did it.
Sorry.
Because there was a discussion about taking and putting in the pump over on the irrigation pump for the tot lot.
Yeah, so,
You weren't here for that?
September 2003?
No, there's another piece that we did. That was the plan.
Yes.
They came before this board and asked for, instead of doing that, they wanted to put in the irrigation wells.
That was, that was later on. It wasn't the original one. Yeah,
Because the
that was later on.
irrigation wells actually
Yeah.
worked.
That one I was here for that.
Yeah, I knew you were.
Yeah, because I had to recuse myself at the time.
So what do they want to
Yes.
do?
Yes.
They did it. They put in the irrigation well, therefore they
That's
don't.
good, isn't it?
Yes, it works for Flatley Field.
And so they don't want,
They don't want to do the tot lot. They
Because they've
traded
done it.
one
I thought
for
we
the other.
traded them off.
We did, and this is the acceptance of that because it's now done.
oh,
So in your
so what do they
approval,
want us to do?
So what we're
Just
gonna do
say
is we're
they've
going
done it,
Yes.
congratulations,
thank
Fuller
you.
Village.
Yes,
All right, we can do that.
yes. In the site plan approval, you'll say that they did it.
All right, so we're going to have Deborah introduce herself and the team.
I will,
Go
I
from
will,
there.
I'm Deborah Felton, I'm the Executive Director of Fuller Village, and thank you for this hearing. I'm going to let my team introduce themselves, but I do want to say that these are plans that I've shared with our residents a number of times. Actually, this morning, I had a meeting it's this morning and yesterday at both locations to go over the full plans, and everybody's very excited about this. I think neighbors, when they did come in to review the plan, they were concerned that we were building additional housing and adding more people to the site, which we're not. It is adding additional amenities, but I will let my team take it. So nice to have a team.
Okay,
Welcome.
thank
All
you.
of you.
Good evening, members of the planning board. I'm Catherine Martin. I'm the landscape architect with Develis Serene. John Downey is the architect on the project, and Jim Develis is the civil engineer on the project. Just to give you a brief overview, I think you are all familiar with the campus, but we do have an aerial up here that shows the two campuses with their respective lot lines. Both campuses are well over 20 acres and have been developed for quite some time, both with kind of a central community building in the center, Gordon House on the Blue Hill Ave campus, and then kind of the community meeting area on the Brush Hill campus, which is the western upper campus. Both of the additions are small amenities addition to both of these campuses. None of them are additional units. And we can start with the Blue Hill Ave. We'll be looking at actually, if you can go back to the aerial for 1 second, you can see the location of the dining and deck addition. So when we look in the context of the survey, you have an idea of where it's going on site. And then on the western Brush Hill Road campus, you can see the location of the proposed fitness expansion. And on that case, it is on the front of the building, unlike on Blue Hill, where it is on the rear of the building. So we can move. This is the existing conditions plan survey for the Blue Hill Ave campus. This is the back of the Gordon House. It's kind of a little bit hard to understand. That's why we did bring the aerial first. So this is the existing back of the building. The western side of the building where the deck protrudes is approximately where the addition will start, and then it will extend to that other kind of notch out just beyond that. The building right now is where it's shown, and just behind the building where we're proposing the expansion is some landscape area, and then the topography drops off quite abruptly behind the existing deck. And we have a tree line there, and an existing granite staircase that, you know, potentially was part of the old estate. We're not quite sure. It's more of a landscape feature, less of a walkway that people use. And then just to the right of that is another bituminous walkway that will also remain. And basically, it's more of a garden path, not used often. So we can move on to the next slide. So right here, we have our layout materials plan and our grading utility plan. If we look at the top plan, we can see the addition that's going to be added on to the back of the building. It's approximately 1,700 square feet of addition, and John will talk about this a little more. It will be a dining room, deck, card room, game room, and a screen porch. Very little impact to the site and very little proposed work. They are basically protecting a lot of the existing features, is the site work that we're doing there, and tying into some existing features. Some of the walls will have to be removed, and then there will be some isolated grading around the foundation. But as you can see where we're showing that black line, that'll be our silt sock, our erosion control, and we really don't anticipate much disturbance beyond that. And then we can probably move to the next plan, and John can tell you a little bit more about this addition.
Good evening. My name's John Downey. I'm the architect on this project. What you're looking at in that particular elevation, from left to right, the screen porch is on the far left at the face of the other building, which is the Foster building, residential building. And then as you go to the right, there is an existing porch. Yep, you get that right. And the next portion of it is the cards and dining room addition, which sits on top of a basement, an extension to the basement, a deck that's open to the existing facade of the building, and those three windows are in the existing facade. And then a dining addition, which is designed to be an extension of the existing dining room so that it looks pretty much the same. If you scroll down a little bit, I think. Yep, this is the opposite side. This would be the west side. From the face of the building to the right is the existing dining room, and to the left is the new dining room. So they are made to match. That's the plan. Screen porch at the top, cards and the game room, then a deck, and then the dining room extension.
Okay, we can probably move on to the next addition. So this would be the existing conditions as built for the Brush Hill Road project. This is the existing conditions survey of the entire site. And if you can, thank you, zoom in and show the area just at the drop-off where we will be expanding. You can see that as the existing drive and some of the existing drop-off entryway and buildings. And we can move to the next slide so you can get an idea of where the addition will fit. So we'll be at the drop-off just to the left of the existing front door. The fitness center will be bumped out into that current landscape space. And then you can see on the rear of the building, there will also be another small bump out for the locker room. We'll be looking at about a total of 2,500 additional square feet of building footprint to be added for the addition. And then you can also see to the right, there will be another landscape amenity added. There'll be a dining patio added with a small retaining wall just to the right of the front entry that will extend off the building. But this will be landscape and not building itself. Basically, no change to any of the drop-off pickup. We will just be coming a little bit closer to building, picking up eating up landscape area there. No new doors or any circulation coming off the building here. It will all remain the same. And I'll turn it over to John to tell you about the building.
Again, the fitness extension is designed to look very similar to the rest of the building. It will have the same sort of features that the existing building has. It will just add a great deal of fitness area to the project for the use of the current residents. In the space that there is one locker room in that plan, it was 2 locker rooms, the men's and women's, and they've found that those have been inadequate for the residents. Each of them had 1 shower, and so that it was used more. It's been used more than they had anticipated, or over time. This is a 12-year-old, 13-year-old project. So we are taking the 2 locker rooms and combining them into 1 locker room, which will be the men's locker room, and then building a new women's locker room, and that's where that extension is off the back side of the building. And as Katie said, there's the patio. So the look of the building is much the same as what it has been in the past. It's just pushed forward a bit. And then the extra patio on the right, and then we're changing out the material that's on the gable end of the Commons building. It right now is just vinyl clapboards, and everybody feels that the look of it isn't what they were wanting to project. So we're going to change that out to fiber cement siding with trim and a lit window over the entrance, sort of mark the entrance a little bit better.
All right, any questions from board members? Alex?
I think it looks great. Nice job.
Other questions, comments, statements? Do I have a motion
I
with
actually
no
have a
questions?
question.
Oh, all right, fire away.
It just, and this, I don't know if this, I hope this isn't a big deal. But just because the application we received was for site plan approval, we do have a Form M for modification. I mean, is it necessary to submit a new form just for to keep everything on the straight and narrow, or?
I don't think so.
I'd be okay with just a note to the file.
Yeah, I think a note to the file is fine. So,
Thank you for pointing it out.
yes, always good to catch those details. Anything else?
So moved.
You have to tell me what you're moving, Alex, for the record.
I'd move that we approve the proposed modifications to the site plan as shown in the Fuller Village December 11th, 2015 plans, and give them site plan, we give them site plan approval. We approve them by giving them site plan approval.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Just a question.
Yeah.
Do we also need to include in that motion the language around the tot lot?
I would,
The thanks for
well,
doing,
the removing it from
There was a request
the,
for that, right?
Yes. I have somebody who would like to speak to that. Mr.
Yes,
Sheffield, please come
I'm
forward.
Attorney Bob Sheffield. I submitted the plan.
Just make sure you're speaking into the mic.
Yes.
Just get a little bit closer.
I just wanted to say the additional portion of that would be the elimination of the tot lot requirement that was in the 2003 SBA.
Are you adding that
part
to
of
your
my
motion?
motion
That is
that
part
we
of your motion?
eliminate that
All
language.
right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all right. Any further discussion, comments? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's a unanimous vote.
But we got to write this up.
Yes, Tim, I think you've drafted a site plan
Yes.
approval. You want to draft this one for us?
I'll have it ready for a signature on the 11th.
Signature on the
I'd
11th?
be happy to, why,
You guys can-
send it out for, right.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Confirm.
much.
Great,
All right,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right.
Emily, I heard you were not running again, but until I saw it in the paper, I didn't believe it.
It is, in fact, true. All right, so I believe in looking at our agenda that we have,
Tim has a question.
Tim, yes.
We have a second ballot on the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Can you pass down the results so I can have a look at them, please? And I'll announce.
Well, I'm saying there's a three-way tie for second place.
Oh, okay.
So we need to have I've made up
A runoff.
runoff.
Can we know who first place is?
Richard Burke.
Oh, okay, good. He was a
was
master
the-
planning
was the-
committee member.
The one clear winner right now.
All right.
So I've put the 3 names of the 3 second-place winners
Okay.
on these small pieces of paper.
Ah.
If you could put a very clear X next to your top 2 choices,
Okay.
and then we will count up those numbers. and
This
then-
is good. This is
I
good,
love it.
good electioneering.
I should have turned this over to you from the start.
So a clear X next to your top,
Top 2.
2.
X next to the top 2.
And then
Thank
pass
you.
them down to Julia.
Excellent suggestion from Alex.
Yes.
Not a hanging
Well
chad.
Yes. X, not check marks, not circles.
Exactly.
Top
Number 2
2.
pencils only, please.
2.
I'm pencil.
All righty. Excellent suggestion. A from Alex and B from Tim. Well done.
Tim?
Julia?
Should I have 5 again?
Yes.
I
Do you-
didn't touch
do you
any
have
of
5,
them,
Todd?
I
You have
just for the
5?
record.
No, Mr. Whiteside, you want
Okay,
to?
Let me on my
Alex,
ballot.
Just hang on.
Okay. Alex is finishing his.
Oh, he's got to check the facts.
Well, yeah, that's important to check the facts.
And
All right,
we
so
have-
while Alex is doing that, I
Alex is
believe
done.
our only 2 other items, other than the final vote on this, is that we have to talk about the non-conforming business use, and then, depending on the time and our energy level, we have to talk about our process for getting to October.
I have a question.
Yes.
We voted on a bed and breakfast language
Yes.
for May.
Yes,
Who is submitting that to warrant committee?
that gets submitted to the Board of Selectmen,
It gets
actually.
submitted to the board of select. okay.
Yes, yes.
Who is in charge of doing that?
The planning staff does
Okay,
that.
okay.
Yep,
Just wanted to make sure.
okay. So, shall we give Julia a minute to, or do you guys want to plunge into non-conforming business?
No, I think we should wait.
Okay, all right, so let's wait.
We also had this item,
Oh, yes, we did. Thank you. I know what you're saying because I can
Small
see it
item,
from
yeah.
there. Yes, there was an article submitted, like 3 lines long, to change the double L.
was
We
in our
have 2
packet.
Ls to a P. So yes, here it is. Thank you for that reminder. So this is to see if the town will vote to amend Section 10 of the general bylaws, known as the zoning bylaws, by redesignating subsection L of Section 3, Assisted Living Residence Development, ALRD, as subsection P of Section 3, and this was Article 43 on the May 2013 warrant, because as we know, our zoning articles were not in a format that allowed us to see how many sections we had of what. So 2 sections, 2 bylaws got designated as L. So do I have a motion on this? Because I think it's,
I move that.
okay.
It sounds like a very progressive thing to do.
I would say so, Alex.
Moving us forward.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Excellent. So this will be submitted to the Board of Selectmen along with the bed and breakfast, and possibly something else. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. That's unanimous.
This is the subsection L.
Do we have a tally?
Was there a 2-way tie
There's a
for
two-way.
3rd place? So we're going to have,
Yes.
All right.
have a,
So you're going to write that up. I just want to say for anybody watching this, this is real history on television here. All right, so in that case, while Tim's preparing our 3rd ballot, let us have a look at the non-conforming business use bylaw. So we've been kicking this idea around for a while. It is actually something that I am hearing more about from people around town, is this idea of specific versus general zoning. So, here you go. And so we will do our last ballot and send it off, and then if you want to introduce it, that'd be good.
Looking to see who they are.
choose your top 1.
Top 1, yes. Don't choose top 2 or be in real
I
trouble.
put it in your hands again.
Your ballot will be disqualified if you do.
So,
All right, so you guys want to, Brian, you want to kick
Sure.
it off?
So this came up in the fall. Was considered for the fall town meeting, was deferred at that time. We then discussed it again as sort of a, or it was discussed as, or submitted, excuse me, as an alternative to the language that was submitted by Mr. Corcoran by me. At this point, in conversations with Mr. Corcoran, along with some others, I've put forward this as a potential general bylaw for consideration in May that would do a couple of things. One is it would create a bylaw that would allow non-conforming business uses in a residential district to make modifications to their property, potentially slightly expand their size under specific conditions that would hopefully improve the site from a conformance standpoint to our other business uses around town. It would potentially serve as a parachute for the Ice House project. If the Blue Hills Parkway project is not voted favorably in February, the project would follow under this fit under this bylaw, and therefore could still be proposed as a special permit application under this bylaw. It also it's designed in a way where we have been able to clearly identify the sites in town that will be impacted. We worked with planning staff to identify those sites through our GIS system. We'll present that tonight. And it's, I don't have the specific number, but it's 24 sites that would be impacted, and we can walk through them tonight. That's the introduction. Do you have anything you want to add, Cheryl? I worked on this with Cheryl in preparation, and it was submitted around a couple of times with comments for review.
Alex submitted some, and I submitted some, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that as far as some of the dimensional size and other things, we did take a quick look at a few test sites just to see what the impact would be, and we refined the numbers as we worked on it as a result of that. We haven't tested all 24 but that are identified, but we certainly can. We tested a number of the smaller ones and a couple of the more medium-sized ones.
All right.
We also specifically limited the site, the size, to 4.5 acres. That was guided primarily by trying to cull out some of the larger parcels that would fall into this that we believe would not want to be modified under a bylaw of this, this tenor. We would want to see those done in a different way. That would be an example. That would be the Pepsi site, the Thayer Nursery site would not be included in this. The Thomas Nursery site would not be included in this. Those are a few examples off the top of my head that would not fall under this zoning.
So I think seeing the sites, to start off with, seeing the sites that would be, would fall under this would be useful for the board, so.
So I don't think I took out.
The ones we talked to.
Yeah.
The large ones?
Yeah, the
We'll
large
have
ones.
we'll have to take them out as we go.
Yeah, those are on there. So a green pin here is is a site that's greater than an acre. A teal pin is a site that's less than an acre. A blue pin is a nonprofit entity, but still a sort of non-residential use. And then a white pin is, the way that Bill and I did this is through the tax assessor. So we sort of weeded out a bunch of things that we just knew would not apply. Anything in the business district, for instance, is not on this map for obvious reasons. There were some artifacts, whether they're home offices or if you've got like a copy machine and Tedeschi's is like its own little business, so that's in there. So things like that. I don't want to say completely ignore them just because they're kind of on there, but I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
And just to quickly address that, home office was raised as a concern. Certainly the intention of this was not to create business uses in-home office environments. So we put in a provision to limit, to require the use to be at least 50% of the site, with the intention of excluding home businesses when we did that. So we could certainly discuss whether 50% is the right number, but that was the intention of that carve-out.
Okay. So let's have a look at some of these and know what they are beyond.
So, I mean, you guys can guide me. I just...
Is there 25 pins on there right now? 24?
There's probably more.
Guess there's probably got
I
some
need
more.
I need to clean this up a little bit, but for the most part.
Why don't we just start from the east, Tim, and start working west? That's west, but we can start west if
No,
we
no,
want.
no, 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 no. I know which way is
There's the ocean, that's east.
Nice thing about living in this area,
Exactly.
right? You hit water.
So here is the Jubenville law offices. This is right in the corner. It's a house with professional offices in it. Right across the street is Blue Hills Bank. This is technically not in the business district. It's right on the edge. And then over here are the professional offices. What's the address here? 424 Adam Street, which this front parcel and this rear parcel kind of add up to a little bit more than an acre. So those are, in this part of town.
I think that's good to call those out, by the way, because I'm not sure that a lot of people realize that those aren't actually in a business district.
Yeah.
So.
So we can maybe zoom out a little bit.
What's that white pin?
This white pin is,
That looks like an error.
Home
Okay.
office.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
it's-
home office. Okay.
so the white ones, try
Don't
to.
count, okay.
This is Pleasant Street Deli, right over here on Pleasant Street. This, we can deal with this in a sec. Harold Plumbing on the corner of School Street. The Husa Club, I'm not sure, I forget if you guys had said if that was going to be something that could be applied here.
How do we deal with nonprofits?
Potential nonprofits were added in.
Sort of, a lot of action here at the corner of Reedsdale and Randolph. Tedeschi's, Driscoll Landscaping, incidentally, their address is 399 Reedsdale, which is a house on Reedsdale Road.
You've also got, it's not marked on your map, but the empty parking lot next to Tedeschi's, which used to be a gas station.
It's not listed because it's all one property.
That's actually part of the Tedeschi's lot?
You've got
I thought that
the-
was a separate
you've got the
parcel, okay.
Tedeschi's, the two house lots that were on Reedsdale.
Yes,
You've got the old gas station site, which is right up against Tedeschi's.
Yep.
It's all under one ownership.
oh,
It's
okay.
been combined, a
Yep, that's
combined
fine.
parcel. The whole combined parcel also has an AUL against it from DEP.
Right.
An administrative use limitation.
I knew that for the former gas station. I didn't realize that was
Yes.
all under one ownership.
all
I
under
thought
one
Tedeschi's
ownership.
was separate. Okay, thank you.
So this is, you can't see it on the map, but this is
Seasons
Hospice.
Hospice.
Yeah. Which is looking very nice. They did a nice job with the work there.
This is the Carriage House School is here.
Go by
Miss
Bent's.
Bent's.
You want by
Oh,
Bent's?
Bent's,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely
Bent's, on the, right by Pleasant Street and Randolph.
7 Pleasant Street.
I need to take this off, this is the golf club. So this is, what Brian's talking about with the acreage limit, this is 20-some odd acres.
Okay. So I'm assuming that Wollaston and the Norfolk County, the President's Golf Course, would both be excluded from this bylaw. Okay.
President's has a conservation restriction against it anyways.
Did we say you were going to take all the nonprofits off here?
No, because not all the nonprofits have CRs.
So they were doing an acreage exclusion. So the larger part. So I would assume Cunningham, which is also a nonprofit, would also be excluded from this because of the acreage.
The acreage.
I mean, what is Cunningham, I guess sort of now the question is, how to define a business.
Right,
use.
that is the
Yes.
question that
That
we're
is the
going to, we should
question.
definitely add
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
certainly we wouldn't, the park shouldn't count.
Eagle Farms
Yeah.
is so here's where the Pepsi factory is. There's a number of businesses. This is an 11-acre site. This is out.
Okay.
Similar for now. The interesting thing about A. Thomas is that the main sort of business is over here, but this land, Bill probably knows a little bit more about this than I do, but this is also under that ownership. I don't know if that sort of counts.
They got a family with 2 sides.
Right. Yes.
None of the sites, well, the site across the street is 2 acres. On the south side of the street, I guess. The west side of the street, excuse
Yeah.
me. The north side of the street, both of those sites were over 6, I believe.
I think it's 8.
Both over 8?
I think they're 4 and 4.
I didn't think they, I thought we kept them out.
We intended to keep them out.
Okay, so then that's
We looked
something
at
else
them
to
and we
look
tried
at.
to keep them, yeah.
So I think we looked at
4
the
and 4,
the
3
web.
and 3.
No, it's bigger than that.
And by the way, I think, again, I think this map,
Did you
Tim,
say it's
this
bigger?
is very
And
helpful
include that
because,
piece on the top,
Why?
because the piece on the top, see the open field on the top?
Mm-hmm.
Keep going up to the right a little
I
bit,
see
Tim.
it, I see it.
That's land that's owned by Animal Rescue League. It's not owned
Yes.
by Thomas.
that's right.
Well, we based it on the GI, we based the acreage by, on the GIS, so we'll need to confirm that, because I'll look
Okay.
at rep right now.
Let me zoom
All right,
out a
what
little
else?
bit more. Their nursery down here, Cheryl, if you could, we can talk
So,
offline about.
just to
Which
clarify,
ones?
but just to clarify, so Thayer Nursery's special permit is on 9 acres. So,
The other thing about Thayer is that we put that it has to be on the town storm, sanitary
on
sewer.
Right.
So it wouldn't apply to a septic system situation.
All of the various hospital uses over here, but again, that land is huge. The center school, the preschool
Excuse me,
operates out of the.
I had a question on the hospital. So are the doctor's offices on the hospital, is all of that considered non-profit and non-taxable?
No, the hospital with the emergency room part, that's the nonprofit. The offices are commercial.
Okay, and they're
Those
taxed at a
get
commercial?
taxed.
So
They
that
do get taxed.
They do get taxed, but
Yes.
that's under what kind of permit?
I know it had to go to ZBA, so it's a special permit from the ZBA.
Okay.
And I know in the past, I know during the master plan discussions, but even before that, there was talk about whether or not Milton Hospital would want to have its own medical district. I don't know that those discussions ever actually got up to the hospital. There were ideas that had been kicked around.
Right.
So I think that would be something where we would want to talk to
We
them
did.
directly before doing something that affected.
We had initial talks with them, but
Yeah.
only to the point that Daphne and I went
The
to
sister
the
plan,
hospital.
yeah.
Right, I remember you had
was it.
that, but there weren't
Nothing
anything
further than that.
further to
No.
conversations, yeah. So, but that's something that we might want to keep in
Yes.
mind.
See how it's written.
So
Because
here,
of course, the point of doing this is to also avoid any, and in looking at these properties, the point is to figure out where there might be unintended consequences of doing
Exactly.
something like this. All right, what else?
So at the corner of Reedsdale and Brook Road is to Reedsdale. There's, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 medical offices
Okay.
right there on the corner. Dell's Auto at the end of Breck Street. This is
That one
the,
was a surprise for me.
I keep forgetting it's there. It's like when somebody mentions it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, but I keep
in the
forgetting it's
summertime,
there.
when I walk to get a cup of coffee before planning board meetings, I pass it all the time. It's like an odd little spot. Tedeschi's on Houston Ave. Up here, the Food Mart and the auto shop, I think that's S&E Auto now, right?
Yes.
Over here, this is the Milton Yoga at the corner where that little Brush Hill triangle. Milton Orthopedic on Blue Hills Parkway. What else do we have? And then if you go, if we go down Blue Hill Ave,
Oh, right, you have the construction site, McKean.
McKean.
McKean, which is,
McKean's right there.
we'll have to
Yep.
put that
The
on,
pin there.
and then,
This one
What was the
to
other one?
right.
Oh, that's the Milton Power.
Blue
Blue
Hill
Hill
Auto
Power,
Supply.
rather. Yeah.
Can you find a golf course again? I'm very curious about
Which one?
it. Which golf course? Wallaston Golf Course.
Wallaston?
What's that one just to the left of it?
this is one of the kind of junky
offices.
ones. I don't know what
Business.
2 Hourhead is. It was just sort of in the
Whose
system.
house?
So yeah, Blue Hill Power, Franny's Corners over here.
The one that's down on the Boy Scout reservation, right underneath Pine Tree.
This is
That's the propane tank. It's the propane tank at the pool at the Boy Scout camp.
is somehow assessed as a business. That's
Do you have
odd.
that Salamando?
Yeah, so Coulter is over here, and then farther down,
What's that?
what's that? That's Milton Healthcare.
Oh, right.
Oh, right, yeah.
Where did we, did I?
Salamanda's missing.
It was missing
up
before, I don't know if you,
Okay.
That Dollar Lane and Blue
That
Hill
blue one
Avenue.
right there,
Here, like right here?
No,
up a little bit, right there.
No, this is
That's
Coulter.
Coulter.
Down, down, right there.
right there, yeah. So Blue Hill Ice and this one need to be added.
Okay.
and if we're including the other nonprofits, we also have to make sure that Fuller Village is not, I mean, by acreage alone, that should be
Right.
Excluded.
excluded, but again, just,
Well, there is the school also, the Montessori school.
Yeah, the
and
Montessori
Delphi
school.
Academy. I don't
Yeah.
know their acreages, but if we have
And, you know,
schools,
Delphi would be small, that would
Yeah.
fit on this.
yeah,
Why,
yeah, there's,
you want to
Thatcher would
include,
fit on there.
exclude.
you want to exclude? Okay.
Exclude.
You're saying to exclude the nonprofits?
Well, I'm saying that we need to consider
Consistent,
that and be
first of all.
consistent.
Well, this-
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
referring
They
to,
are, they're not on here.
All right,
I mean, there's some that are on, there's some, I mean, there needs to, we need to go back and do a little more systematic look into the various nonprofits. I mean, this was, you know, we had done an initial sweep of the tax assessors list to sort of get rid of things that we just knew were not going to be, we're not going to be good. And, you know, some nonprofits were in because their status was a little hazier than, you know, like a church, for instance, is not going to be something that, you know, so those were sort of off. So I'll need to go in and just make sure that some of these, you know, like the Husick Club, like
schools, anything.
Well,
some of the
and-
schools.
Each one of the Tedeschi's had 2 dots on it because each one has a copy machine. And the copy machine belongs to somebody, so it's a business for somebody. So, I mean, those are the kind of things, we removed that because we took the bigger business.
but I think the other thing that we need to look at as we're mapping these out is you've excluded the churches, but for example, some of those churches have for-profit nursery schools associated with them. So both in terms of mapping what's there, but also in terms of the definition of what constitutes a business, we need to be careful to define what we actually want this to apply to, so that we don't inadvertently apply it to something that we didn't want to apply it to.
We don't want the carriage house to become a convenience store.
Well, and we also don't want to make people nervous who have schools that think suddenly, hey, wait a second, have we just been made,
You're right, because you've got the old Baptist church down in East Milton.
right,
Which has a nursery school in it, and they rent it out to a church group.
Right.
But they do pay taxes.
right.
The
So we
owner of
just,
the building pays taxes.
we just need to be careful
a-
as we're defining these. I think, first of all, showing town meeting
It-
everything
It
that's there.
didn't come out in the assessor sheet,
Right.
but those are some of the peculiarities. Like, we know that Salamanca lot didn't show up. We knew that the McKean lot didn't
yeah.
show up. The Conley Baptist Church didn't show up. Okay.
But as we go through, and to your point about raising public participation earlier, I think we want to show town meeting everything that's there. But then we need to, okay, so this is everything that we've got. These are all the things that are non-conforming in a residential district.
Okay, yep.
Now, we're looking at applying a bylaw to some of them, so then your next map is,
Okay.
these are what it would apply to, and this is what it would not apply to. But first, show everything that's there
So we're
by type.
seeing things here that are non-conforming, but there's certainly
But they're not
a lot of things that we
necessarily
don't want to.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly, and that needs to be made clear.
It seems to me, I don't see 20, 24 non-conforming that will work with this. And it gets back to what I've
I
said
agree with
before. If we end up with a dozen, it's like, I don't
It's a
see
lot
the
different
purpose
than
of a
24.
bylaw to apply to.
Well, and that's where we need to get it broken down. So I think even if we could,
you have the list
I
that
like
was
the
in
fact
the
that you
email?
started color coding these. I think if we color code them by
yeah, I
what they
do.
are, so auto-oriented, nonprofit school, you
Yeah.
know, whatever it is,
Yeah.
start off with that and say, look, this is everything we have here. And then, okay, this is what the bylaw would actually apply to. That starts to give town meeting and members of the public an idea of what actually is getting affected here.
Yeah, and it's just that if it is 24, if it's 10, if it's 15,
Right.
it's 18, that's a very small number in a sense. So I'd like to see, if it's 24, I'd like to see the 24 identified as what these 24 are. I don't want to find out that two of them are the Tedeschi's and the Xerox machine and the Tedeschi's, because we don't think the Xerox machine and the Tedeschi's going to enlarge the business.
Well, the
They can put in a
email,
bigger Xerox machine, but that's about it.
the email that was sent to Tim, and Tim, I think, sent out, had a list of properties that we identified. I mean, one of the things about it is, and I think it's been mentioned by others that came before the board, is that some of these are of a size that it would prohibit them, the expense would prohibit them to do their own zoning, which is the process that the McKeans are doing right now. If you have a small site that needs improvement, it's not likely that somebody's going to go to town meeting to get that small site rezoned. As the McKean property at 2 acres, you know, is a property which can, you know, that expense could be appropriate for. So what we're trying to do is address these businesses that otherwise don't have a means or an incentive to make any improvements, because they have to go through that process.
What do you mean by improvements? I think what I'm hearing when you're saying improvements, I'm hearing enlarging. I mean, if I've got a Tedeschi's down on Houston Ave and it's a mess, I think the neighbors would even be fine to come in here and say, yeah, let the guy redo the front of the store. It looks terrible. But if he starts saying, well, I want to put in parking and I want to do this, I want to raise it up a level, they're going to say, well, wait a minute. We don't want that. Well, let's be by the bylaw, I can do these things.
I'm sorry. Well, it's not a public hearing, it's a board discussion. You're welcome to listen in, but we don't usually have, is there?
I live beside the Tedeschi's on Houston.
Oh, okay.
I have a vested interest in what's happening.
Well, in that case, let me ask the board members, would you be willing to listen to this gentleman? Sure, in that case, please
I
come
have
forward.
a question. I mean, there are plenty of people with vested interests here.
Well,
There are all the residents living around all these 24 sites that have
Understood.
vested interest in this.
Yeah.
down to my house
And
Yeah, I understand your point, Alex. We did not have a citizen speak earlier because there were no citizens to speak. We do have one person
I
here.
didn't realize I couldn't
who's-
speak
Yeah,
at that time.
normally we have a citizen speak at the beginning of every meeting, but if the board is willing to let you speak, then I'm willing to have you do that, so. But Alex's point is noted, that a lot of people would be
My
affected by
point
this.
is that I'm delighted you're here to speak, but I'm sure there would be 100 other people here to speak if there had been any notice given that this was something the planning board was proposing to stick on the May warrant.
Well, sadly, as we know, the sound was not available at from our
I
last
understand
meeting,
it.
so nobody heard that.
October is available.
Well, and we will continue with that discussion in a moment. Please, sir.
Thank
Your
you.
comments.
I'm John McMahon. I live at 106 in Houston Avenue down in Milton. I live right beside the Tedeschi's. I have a 9,200 square foot lot, and a certain percentage of my house I have possession of the Tedeschi's, which he didn't have full title when he changed over to 7-Eleven. On the other side of me, there's 6,200 square feet or 500 square feet, and that neighbour there is in the same boat as I am. If you come down to my house tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, the trash will be picked up there. You'll be woken up every morning as a result of it. So I'll gladly, I have skin in the game here. And so that's why I came here tonight, just to find out what was going on. I really didn't know you couldn't speak at these hearings, and I apologise for that. My concern is that the wording of the bylaw with a 3,000 square foot lot doesn't take into consideration the buffers. And I don't agree with that wording. I think the buffers should be allowed to develop within that area. I'm not saying it should be allowed to develop all over the town, but I think within that area, considering the history of the commercial activity in that area. My house was originally a coal yard, and the coal yard spread over, which brought the shop. They used to shoe the horses, we're talking about 200 years ago, and they'd get the coal, they'd come down, the shop sprung up as a result of it. Another shop sprung up across the road as a result of the activity. That coal yard, I believe, And well, the coal yard was the start of the commercial activity there. The commercial activity ran around the corner around Thatcher Street, because Thatcher Street lot there was commercial too, the 3 lots on those sides. The development of the Teskeys with 3,000 square feet doing $2.5 to $5 million a year is crazy. And he needs the infrastructure. He's not going to put the infrastructure in because I've approached him. He's not going to put that infrastructure in. What will happen is eventually is the town will rise up and realize that, you know, it needs an alternative. My neighbour on the other side is very concerned too. We get our windows broken. We get, I got my trees all cut the other day. There's a lot of passing traffic. We're too close to the road. We need to be back. We need to have, be back from the road. And we need to be commercial as well as residential. And that's all I really want to say on this. I know you guys have a hard job with trying to figure out everybody's issues, but this has been going on a long, long time. And I think it's only fair that redevelopment comes in, but comes in for everybody as opposed to for one person. Because that one person is in Texas, and it's miles away from here, and they've got thousands of shops. They're not vested in the community. The person who's the franchisee has just taken over and really doesn't really own the business, owns the franchise, doesn't own the property. And so what I would like to see is the town look on these small developments. This is a 3,000 square foot lot. And as I say, he's doing $2.5 to $5 million according to his own website of what he's doing in business. So I would like the town to consider the neighbours as part of that development.
So adding the parcels on either side
I
is
could
a
give him the
possibility.
infrastructure.
Okay.
And so could so could the neighbour on the other side of them. That would put 18,000 square feet of property, maybe 19,000 square feet of property, as opposed to 3.
Okay.
So it's something, and on top of that, Thatcher Street those gardens are wide. So there is opportunity there to put more space, to put more in there as far as, and the people of the town use that area. If you had a laundry in the form of dry cleaners or a small coffee shop or something like that in the neighbourhood, people would use that as well as what's already there. And it would also give to Teskeys the incentive to redevelop because you'd have the competition. So that's all I'm asking, and I will be at all your meetings from now on finding out, and I will also have someone draft a letter up voicing my objections.
That would be very interesting. We'd
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
you
much
very
for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I understood this gentleman to say that the store there could expand onto his lot.
I think he's looking for parcel assembly to allow a larger development. Well, that actually becomes an issue when looking at these parcels, because there are some that are in fact too small to expand. So do we, as we approach this, whether now for May or October, we're going to have that discussion in a little bit, but I think we need to consider whether or not we want to allow parcel assembly. I mean, we've heard one voice just now talk about the possibility of adding those neighborhood services. Is this something that we want to consider, or are we trying to limit the bylaw to just those existing businesses?
Then you're not talking about a non-conforming use in a residential neighborhood. Now you're talking about developing a new commercial area.
Right,
That
you're
I don't-
absolutely
I
right.
don't think we want to do that.
Well,
no.
I don't know if I agree with that, because you're limiting the expansion size here to, you know, a certain. You're not taking a 3,000 square foot site and going to 19,000 square feet. In this case, you could go to 7,500. So there's a limit here on how much you can expand. You're not creating a commercial area. You're allowing a non-conforming business that's has been operating probably for a long time in most cases, but is not operating either at its highest best use. It doesn't have the proper infrastructure. There's a number of things that are wrong with most of these sites. You're allowing them to potentially add one parcel to accommodate parking, to accommodate seating, to accommodate whatever their problem might be, a small expansion, whatever it might be. But as part of that, you're also requiring them now to follow the specific bylaws that you're setting forward here, where today they don't have to do any of that.
I agree. Hang on.
You're
him
creating a
finish on
stormwater, an improvement on stormwater. You're bringing in improvements on buffers. You're creating requirements for landscaped areas. You're requiring open space. So we're getting a lot of benefits from these, in most cases, very small expansions. We're going from 0.1 acre to 0.2 acres in many of the cases. And it's limited at the other end. If you're talking about a 4-acre site, you're limited to one buildable lot in Milton, which is 40,000 square feet. So you're not talking about huge expanses.
I agree that this proposed bylaw limits it. What the gentleman was asking for is what?
Don't
Or
limit it.
suggesting was what Mike was saying, which is an expanded.
Now you're going to start a neighborhood war.
I don't support that.
You're going to start a
Okay, so
neighborhood war.
you guys are in agreement for
No.
the moment on that?
No,
No, that you don't want to do that. Brian just said he wouldn't
I don't
support
wanna
it. You're
do that,
saying that
nor
you
do I
would
want
support
to add
it.
any more space because.
Okay, so then that goes back to the.
Well, it goes back to a war. I live here, he lives here, he lives there. He wants to sell his. No, I'm going to sell you mine. Why should he get to sell to Tedeschi's for $1 million and get more for his property than it's really worth because Tedeschi's wants to expand and they get plenty of dough? I want to sell my house. You should allow me to make it bigger. Let Tedeschi's make it double the size you're saying.
But that's not
why
allowed
are you being discriminatory and not allowing us all to sell to Tedeschi's?
No, because some people have to suffer. And it's the people who don't get to
you
bought
shouldn't-
out by Tedeschi's who will have to sit and suffer the consequences
biggest store
of
now.
this. Yes, exactly.
Well, then a
I
couple
don't
of
think
years from
that's
now,
a
let's
fair
make it bigger.
statement either. I mean, if you look at our master plan, we're encouraging walkable neighborhoods, we're encouraging more amenities in our community, we're talking about more commercial revenue. This is hitting a lot of the master plan comments. So, and I think the idea that you suffer because you live next door to Tedeschi's, they live next door to a Tedeschi's now. So, if you're improving the Tedeschi's, in my line of work, most of the time what we find is when you improve the commercial area, the residential property values in the adjacent parcels go up, not down. So I'm not sure where I see this suffering. I'm happy. This is going to be before a public hearing, before it goes, an up or down vote from the planning board and the warrant committee, and it has to go before town meeting. And I think it is high time that we let town meeting speak on general zoning, because we've done everything we can for the 2 years I've been on the planning board to avoid having the conversation at town meeting, and I think it's time to have it.
Well, for one thing, you say it'll increase the
Mike, and then I've
property
got
values. I'll say the same thing I've said 1,000 times. Randolph has plenty of commercial property. Quincy has plenty of commercial property. Dorchester has plenty of commercial property. Mattapan has plenty of commercial property. I don't see their property value being that higher than the property value in Milton. And there's a reason why the property value in Milton is that high, is because they don't allow the development that they allow in these other towns.
Okay, I have a list now. I've got Alex, I've got Brian, and I've got Cheryl.
It seems to me that Ned has gone about this in just the right way. He initially consulted with the neighbors of the site that he was proposing to change. He got their input. He consulted the neighborhood association. He had a big public meeting to find out what the issues were. He went to the DCR. He went to the Conservation Commission. He did a little spade work. It's fine to throw something on the table where you've done nothing, but throw it on the table and say, let's take it to town meeting. It's high time to do so, because this thing has been languishing since last summer. And it really is not ready for prime time at all. It says nothing about when the lot has to be created. It is so wide open because Tedeschi's could expand, could take in the lot next door and say, this is now our lot, it's 8,000 square feet. And zoning is not something you do overnight. And this has holes in it that are big enough to drive a truck through. And to apply it to 24 sites in town without intimating to the neighbors what you were about to come up with is, I think, outrageous.
All right,
Outrageous.
I have Brian, and then I have Cheryl.
So, first of all, I just have to respond to the comment about the communities we were just talking about. First of all, I find it very offensive that this board continues to reference specific communities and suggest, whether directly or indirectly, that their property values are higher or lower than Milton's because of a certain criteria. There's nothing wrong with the communities that were mentioned. Secondly, I could just as easily reference 10 communities that have lots of commercial development where their property values are much higher than Milton's. So that's a crazy argument. Secondly, to hear that this has had, that we're throwing something at the table, Alex, this has had, I've spent 100 hours on this. We've had planning staff working on GIS. If you have specific comments, we're happy to consider them. But to hear that this is thrown at the table is insulting when Cheryl and I have spent 2 weekends sitting in our kitchens working on this and talking to lots and lots of people who have spoken about this in the community, in public, and getting their feedback. So please don't tell me it's something we're throwing at the table, because maybe it's not, maybe you haven't spent any time on it, but I've spent a lot of time on this article. So,
Cheryl and then Alex.
go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, I have a few things I want to reference this back to. The master plan. There was as Brian said, a lot of discussion about walkable communities and need for amenities in the neighborhood. It's the reason a lot of people support the notion of a market and a cafe at the McKean property on Blue Hills Parkway. And people who have lived here for a very long time said we actually had more of these amenities in our neighborhood, but we lost them because the business closed. And then the underlying zoning, which got laid across the town in 1938, when there were businesses spread throughout the town, it didn't take those uses into consideration. So it has, those people who've had those businesses have been put at a disadvantage ever since. And what we're trying to do is give them an advantage to improve their business. And I think most people would say that they like to have amenities in town. It's why the new businesses that have opened, the Plate, for example, has done so well. People would like to spend their dollars in Milton and not have to go to drive a long distance away to go have coffee or to go have dinner. The other thing I want to say is that there was a rigorous special permit process built into this article. It's not as if people can just go apply for a building permit and it's done. They have to meet a lot of criteria just like they do in any other special permit. So it's just the opportunity to give somebody a process that starts with zoning instead of starting with a citizen's petition or starting with something where they're going to have something rezoned as an overlay over one site, which we all know is not the way most planning is done. And then the other thing in terms of timing is that we have an opportunity between now and town meeting in May to have a public hearing and public process to vet this article, and it will force us to have the conversation that people want us to have.
I have Alex.
It seems to me that good planning does not simply take the happenstance of where a existing business might be. Good planning has a qualified planner look at the map and determine what would be a good area for a particular type of development. This is totally scattershot. It is totally happenstance. There is no thought put into where these businesses are going to be located, other than the fact that there's something there now. And that is bad zoning, because zoning requires thought. Thought as to where the best place to open up the residential areas for business should be. You don't just say there's something here, let's make it bigger. That's not good planning. It's not what a planner is taught to do. A planner looks at the map, looks at the areas, and determines good sites. That's what developers do. They don't go looking around for where there's an existing business. And I would like to say that I see an awful lot of stuff in this zoning that came directly out of Ned's zoning for the Ice House development.
So that came out of the original the original zoning that was proposed for last year. So that they've been developed along each other the whole time.
I see a
I
place
had
like.
Brian first and then.
So,
Dwight.
yeah, no, Alex, I don't disagree with you.
Don't speak out of turn, just
It
wait for
didn't
me to
happen, yeah.
recognize you.
What
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. We should be looking at large tracts of the town and figuring out the right way to plan. These businesses are here, and they're not going anywhere. And if a particular business leaves, another business can reopen in the same location as long as it's not a change of use. So we're not trying to create new businesses. We're trying to allow existing businesses that aren't going anywhere to operate far better, more safely, with higher benefits to the community, and with more respect to the bylaws we have. So I do not disagree that we should be looking at this community in a much more global standpoint and zoning it appropriately. What I'm trying to do with this bylaw is address the businesses that are completely outside of the zoning that they belong in and trying to figure out a way to help them improve, because I strongly believe that you can't build business right now in Milton. There is nowhere to do it. So most of these uses are not going anywhere. I'm just trying to find a way to let them operate in a higher and better way.
Mike?
Again, I just don't, I seem, we're trying our damnedest to fix something that doesn't seem to be broke to me. The ice house is a perfect example. It came in here, it was too broad, it's getting narrow. I think people think it's a great idea. I think people on the board acknowledge it's a great idea, and I think it's probably going to move forward. And it's going to move forward in the way that the communities wanted it to move forward. I think the people were a little stunned when people said this was too broad. You might end up with a 7-Eleven here. Oh, wait a minute. That's not what we just got up and said we loved and we're here to protect them. So, again, I keep hearing 24 sites, and we popped through this thing, and everything we popped through was like the Delphi School, the this, that. I seen the Salamando site, and one other site I think that even I thought roughly applied to this. Where are these 24 sites? I want to hear about these 24 sites. And even if it gets to 24 or something below that, again, in my mind, we'll approach it site by site, and we'll get a better product if we approach it site by site,
Brian?
like we will at the Ice House.
So with regard to Ice House, I think you might get a good site there, or you might find out that the site that's being proposed doesn't work for who wants to actually be there, and they're back before town meeting again in a year if they can even afford to wait that long. So you're trying to zone something so specifically without even having a tenant. So we have no idea if what we're permitting for the Ice House site even works. There's the people designing the site are not developers, and they don't have a tenant. They don't know what they're designing for. I think there's a better than 50% chance that if that bylaw passes in February, it'll be back before town meeting again. The other thing I want to mention is let's talk about one of these sites. Let's talk about the site at Brook Road and Blue Hill Parkway, which is the Milton Market and the S&E
Milton Food
Auto.
Mart and
Milton
S&E
Food Mart and
Auto.
S&E Auto. So that site is surrounded by 2 abandoned buildings that are currently blocked off with Jersey barriers. And there's there's a little bit of parking for the Milton Mart, and there's a car repair station there. On a long-term basis, I find a hard time believing that that is the highest and best use for that site, and I have a hard time believing that those 2 abandoned homes are the highest and best use for that site. I also think that no developer is going to be able to afford to spend the money that is necessary to go through a site-specific zoning process to actually develop that site to a higher and better use. So without some sort of non-conforming business zoning that allows them to make improvements to that site, this is what you have, probably forever. And I don't think the people on Brook Road, at least the ones I've spoken to, are real happy about that idea. So again, these are the sites I'm trying to fix. If we want to figure out a way to tighten the bylaw up a little bit to make it closer to these sites, by all means, let's talk about it. But I know that this is not what I want to see as a member of the planning board at one of the gateways to Milton.
Okay, Bill?
No, thank you.
You, okay, fine. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, Alex, and then I'm going to
Certainly,
sort of
we
interject.
discussed at length with Ned the fact that that site doesn't work until you include the house with all the junk in the yard. We said to Ned that we're prepared to, if you can assemble a decent site, then we will do our best to accommodate you in developing it, in zoning it for development. But when you say, here are the 24 sites, buy the lot next to you and don't bother with the lot on the other side of you, this is just not good zoning. This is totally scattershot. There is no requirement for a logical site. It just staggers me.
All right, so my turn, since you've all had a chance to chat and bring your ideas forward. So what we have on the table is a proposal in front of us to put on the May town meeting. So there's a couple of things here that I'm hearing. One is there's obviously a division as to what should be, whether or not this should even be going forward, I think in part, and probably a division as to whether or not it should go for May or October. I'm hearing some deep concerns about what's being proposed. I'm hearing perhaps a misunderstanding between or among people here as to what exactly is being proposed, whether it's an expansion of the business and allowing of a redevelopment and how that could work. I'm also hearing some concerns about the impact on the abutters, on the public in general, and not being aware. Now, the useful thing about our process in that we have to put something on the warrant, we have to have a public hearing before we go to town meeting, the warrant committee has to deal with it, is that there is the opportunity for the public to be involved between now and May. So we should take that under consideration. There is also the opportunity, if we have something that is more broad, to do exactly what has been done with the proposal that was brought forward from the Ice House, which is during our public hearing process and perhaps even a public engagement process, we could narrow down so that if this were to go forward in May, we could narrow down and have a narrowed recommendation by the time we get to May. So I see that as a possibility. So what I'm interested in hearing now from people is, do they feel that this is something that could go forward for May and potentially be narrowed down by the time we get to the point of having a recommendation for the May town meeting? Or do they feel that it is sufficiently broad that it would need to wait for October? So I'd be interested in hearing comments on that. Alex?
I think that if you put it on for May, at least we'll have 2 years before it can be brought back.
All right. And that is, for those who may not have caught that reference, is if a article is voted down by town meeting, we have to wait 2 years before a substantially similar article could be brought back. Town meeting, of course, could have the option of referring it back to the planning board for further study, which would mean that 2 years would not be quite as long necessarily. Mike, any thoughts on May versus October?
I definitely don't think we're ready for May, that's for sure. And whether it's ready for October is another circumstance. And I'm still stuck on this, how many sites there actually are, and what these sites actually are.
Yep, I agree that there's additional information.
As far as comparing to other communities, there was back in the 70s, people said, well, you don't look at your neighbor, you don't care, you're inward, everything's inward. Until a psychologist named Cooley came out and said, it's impossible to compare, it's impossible to live without comparing yourself to other people, without reflecting off of what's around you, and understanding where you're at relative to reflecting off of what's around you.
Brian, any thoughts on May versus October?
Yes, I think that we, first of all, I don't see the opposite side of the table changing its mind between now and October, so I'm not sure that waiting until October to have the same conversation in May makes any sense. I do believe that, certainly I agree that we should refine what business qualifies, because I think that would answer the question about a lot of these sites. I think the list of sites that we have is pretty tight. We can certainly narrow it a little bit and reduce some of these sites, but I think we all worked on this side of the table pretty hard to figure out which sites we were talking about here, and I think defining what the business use is will help to clarify that it doesn't include the nonprofit the institutions and businesses within a nonprofit institution. So I continue to push for May. I think it's important that town meeting be able to weigh in on this. I think the timing after the February special town meeting for the Blue Hill Parkway site will have that fresh in everybody's minds and help everybody at town meeting to decide whether they want to extinguish the idea of general zoning for 2 years, whether they want to bring it back to planning board for further study, or if they're ready to embrace general zoning as something we want to try in Milton. So I think it's time we have the conversation.
Cheryl?
I think pushing it to October won't really gain us much time, because I think we saw last summer that the summer is not a great time to have the conversation. So I think why not push the conversation now? It's a time when we can, start to show some leadership around our zoning. And we may find we get to town meeting and there's enough concern about it that it should be sent back to us for more work, which is fine. But I'd rather have that conversation in May and work on it for October than kick it to October and work on it for next year.
You guys are the proponents. Do you have a motion to make? We have to.
Well, I guess I'd prefer, before we do any specific motion, I'd propose that we at least add a definition for business use to whatever we're going to bring forward, unless you think that's a reduction in scope that we could do as part of the public
I think that's
process.
probably a reduction in scope if this makes it forward.
Last very brief comment.
Yeah, of course.
If this comes to town meeting, I guess maybe I'll just express it myself. I want the people to realize that the development at the ice house was brought about and refined under the present system, and that they're not voting for something that's going to enable things going forward like the ice house, because the ice house came and worked under the present system. I don't want them to tie that together. I think they're voting to further sites like the ice house.
And I think, as I said at the meeting that we had last time, that a general bylaw, something that applies townwide and something that applies to a specific site, those are both useful tools. So there is no reason to assume that we wouldn't have a site-specific coming forward, again, if it is the right tool for the right development, versus a general, which may also be the right tool. Alex, I see your hand.
It seems to me that I hear you say, well, we'll just stick this draft into the hopper and then we'll change it along the line.
I have not actually said that. I have said that's a possibility.
Well, it is not a good possibility because there are a lot of people who have skin in this game, as the gentleman said, and they need to know what is being proposed. Not, well, this is what we're proposing this week, but we're going to maybe come up with something next week and change it around. If this is what's being proposed, so be it. Let it be proposed. It's not ready, but to do what we did last year and keep changing it around, and then maybe a week before the public hearing saying, here's the final changes. It's not fair. It's not fair to the people.
So I agree with you, Alex, that whatever is voted tonight becomes the article that is submitted to the Board of Selectmen. That is the article that we will have our public hearing on. And as we did with the public hearing for the articles for the February town meeting, we will have, if this goes forward, we would have an altered recommendation based on what we heard at the public hearing. But this would be to your point, this would be the article, and that would be the article that went forward. So, any further comments? Did you come up with the definition of a business, or did you
I'm
want
happy to leave that for further discussion. I mean, because frankly, I'm doing that on the fly, and if
You'd
that's
rather
something
have it as part of the public hearing?
As part of the public
Okay.
discussion, and if we need to make a revision as part of our public recommendation, or if Warrant Committee wants to do that and reduce the scope, I think that's fine. I'm not proposing making changes. To respond to what Alex just said, I'm not proposing making changes. If there's changes that come as part of the public process in making a recommendation from the planning board, yay or nay, then we'll deal with it at a time. I'm recommending we put this forward to the warrant. We may have a public process here over the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks where I vote to move this back to the planning board for further study as our recommendation. That's part of the discussion. That's part of the process. So I'm recommending we put this forward to the warrant. and we bring it through the public process and see where we end up, and we may get to May, and everybody may say, send it back.
Cheryl?
Just on the question of the definition of business, do we have that in our bylaws now, or do we have it in town law now in terms of what's considered a non-conforming business, so that we can just reference that as a definition?
Not a non-conforming business, this is a non-conforming, you're talking about non-conforming uses, because they're not allowed in the
that
area in which
district,
they
right.
exist.
Yeah, I'm
So
just
you don't need
asking-
a definition, because that by definition, if they're not allowed, they're a
So
non-conforming
Emily,
use.
just
Yes.
But we're talking
what I
about
was trying
business.
to do as part of that definition, and the one that I was just sort of putting together, was suggesting that a non-conforming business use would be defined as a use that's currently qualified as an allowed use in a business district. So that's how I was starting to draft the definition.
Yeah, and you, and then pulled out some of the, okay. Anything more on this side? We've definitely got sides at the moment, so anything more from the two of you?
You know, again, with all respect for the time you spent on it, and you're saying you're doing things on the fly, this is very important, and it's going to affect a lot of people if this is put forward. I hesitate because the number of people that are going to be impacted is I don't know how many. And that's why I prefer to take them one at a time and get the public's input on it. And I don't even think this should move any place without a lot of public input. The public should have input on what's written on these pages and understand it clearly and definitively before we even make any motion to go anywhere with it.
All right, I'd ask Mike and Alex, and then I'll come back over. Alex, any further comments on your side? Or from your part?
No, I think that I've
Said what you
I
want to
think
say?
I've said what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, all I wanted to say is I think, you know, Mike, I think you're right. I think this requires a public process, and it requires a lot of discussion. And I'll be honest, I think the best way you're going to get the public discussion is to move this thing forward, because we've tried to get a discussion on this for a year now, and we've gotten very muted response. So that means that people either don't care or they're not worried about it. And if they're worried about it, they're going to show up to talk about it, and we're going to get to have the discussion. And I think it's important that we do that.
Just they're only going to get worried about it when you go to do something beside them. When you go to do something beside them, they can come to this board, and we can hear them, and we can listen to them, and we can approach it site by site, and we can make sure it happens. We listened to people at this ice house, and we heard how much they loved what they were getting. And then people said, well, wait a minute. This document here might not get you what you want. So we're here to protect you.
Okay.
We want it to be closely refined.
Hang on. I've got Brian, I've got Cheryl, I've got Alex, and then we're going to start wrapping this up.
This
okay?
is still a site-by-site proposal. This requires a special permit. It requires meetings with neighbors. And frankly, this planning board has proven to be historically very protective of its neighborhoods. If they have a neighborhood outcry, special permits aren't issued. And I would not expect that to change. So this is still a site-by-site process. It allows sites that are too small to afford the time, energy, and effort to go through a site-specific process to actually do something and improve this non-conforming use. That's where my concern is. I think the majority of sites that we're intending to affect here do not have the ability to go through our current process.
Cheryl and then Alex.
Yeah, I mean, that was, Brian just said something that I was going to say. The ice house has 2 acres, so you're looking at a redevelopment opportunity of a change of use. We're not really looking at change of use, we're looking at an improvement to the existing business. And if you're looking at a small property, let's say Bent's, for example, that's been a business for longer than most of the residential development in this town. And yet, there are some things about its location that might make it difficult to succeed as a business. That's a privately owned local business that is not going to have the same kind of resources to put into doing a new zoning just to improve a small business on its current very small site. So what we're trying to do is give some ability for these individual local businesses to improve their business, and it might mean that they get a little bit more parking, and as a trade-off, they provide more open space, or they provide some residential units, which is something we haven't talked about here. But there is an incentive also so that the neighbors are getting something back and the town's getting something back. for that, for allowing us to have a process for them to submit to make improvements under, instead of saying, you have to go one on your own, hire the whole legal team and the design team and everything. By the time you get done, you don't know if you're going to get there, and you'll have spent a lot of money, and we don't know if we're going to say yes. So at least it sets up I think it sets up a much better process than what we just are seeing on the Blue Hill Ice site. It gives people an understanding that if they buy a business in town, that they might actually be able to have it succeed well and provide an amenity. I don't know why business is seen as something which is a negative for everybody. There are people in this town who think businesses near them are an amenity. That's what they would love to see. They'd like to be able to meet their neighbor at the local coffee shop and take their child out in the stroller for a walk to do it instead of hopping in the car and dragging the car seat along. So I think we have to be careful that we characterize that we know everything that everybody else in town wants and that we think we know best. So I do think that we have to have a public conversation about it. And yes, where these are located, the people who are most impacted should be the ones that are contacted first. And we may find that they're not as concerned as some of us around the table are about this proposal. And we won't know until we start the process.
Alex?
When you say there's no change of use proposed, that's absolutely false. There's a huge change of use. If you read it, it says everything but automobile dealerships can be put into this, and a few other exceptions, but it says any use in the business district can be, one of these things can be changed to. So don't say that there's no change of use. There's plenty change of use involved here. The lots can be made, as I read it, really quite big, at least an acre and possibly more. And a lot of business, a lot of new business, a lot of different business. And it isn't going to be mom and pop coffee shops, which are not going to produce any tax revenue to speak of. It's going to be big business. If you're going to get any tax revenues. But one thing that you guarantee by putting this on the warrant is that we better start limiting citizen speak, because this is just like threatening the fire chief well. We are going to be spending, remember Thayer, we are going to be spending all our time listening to people saying, I don't want you to ruin my property. It's going to happen.
All right, final thoughts, Mike. Anything? This is last chance to speak. Any final thoughts?
I'll just reemphasize a point that I always make. If it's 12 sites, if it's 24 sites, how many are going to come up this year? 2, 3? People can't afford it. The guy just told us, the guy that owns the property beside him lives in Texas. He's a bazillionaire. He's the Tedeschi's. Who can't afford it? But I think it should be individually, one by one, and I think I always try to figure out in my mind what is wrong with Milton. I don't think there's much wrong with Milton. We get #1 town in America in the magazine a couple of years ago. It's a sought-after community. It's a beautiful community. It's not broke. It's not broke. We're doing fine. The way we're delving through things, the way we're sifting through things, it seems to work.
Alex, final thoughts?
I think I gave you my final thought is that the residents of Milton are not going to support this. We are just causing ourselves a lot of grief taking this up now.
Cheryl, final thoughts? And then Brian will
I would disagree with making the assumption that we know what the residents of the town are going to support or not support, and I'd like the residents of the town to be able to weigh in on it, and I think the way we're going to be able to get that to happen is to have a proposal for people to react to, and we can explain it and talk to them, and then the town meeting will decide whether they think it's a good idea or not after we go through that public process, and that's the way the process should work. I mean, it is something that's been a concern to people. And we are the ones charged with the process to look at our zoning and to respond to concerns that people have raised. And we went through a master plan process and we identified things that need to be addressed. And this was one of the things. And I do think that it's our responsibility to start moving some of these things forward. So I'd like us to keep that in mind, not to say that we know the answers today are the right answers, but that we're going to go through this process.
Right, and Brian, as the original author, you get last words, other than me, of course.
I don't have any final words other than when this is moved, I'd like to make one change to make it consistent with something that happened tonight, which is I'd want the caliper of the trees to be 6 inches, not 4 inches, because I'd like, if we're going to make that a standard, I think we should have it be consistent. So that's the one change I'm going to suggest we make for tonight.
Right, fair enough. Okay, so the privilege of being chair, occasionally you get one, is that you get to speak last. Taking a step backward from the specific issue that we're talking about tonight, this particular zoning, what I'm hearing is a division that I have heard in town over quite some time over how much of a mix there should be between commercial and neighborhoods. That's been a primary division that surfaced with the Temple discussion, but has been around. I'm hearing a mix from people that, again, this is a conversation that we're having now that I've heard in broader terms of people who are very satisfied and very happy with the way Milton is right now, and people who love Milton the way it is now but seek to have other amenities. And goes back to those mix of amenities in the neighborhoods or not. I am also aware through my own work of the generational divisions and what people are seeking for, where baby boomers and millennials are looking for more of a mix of uses, more of the ability to walk to places, and it concerns me as a primarily single-family hometown that over time we are not going to be able to meet the demands of the market as a town. We've seen that come through in our discussions of the non-conforming dimensions on houses and the fact that people are buying we have older housing stock, as do many towns in New England, and not much of a way of remediating that under our current bylaws without going for variances for certain types of houses on non-conforming lots. And again, I'm a little concerned that as a town, we're not reacting to the lifestyles that people are looking at today, and that could make us less desirable in the future. But more what concerns me is the fact that we do have this division. It's come out in the master plan a little bit where people are seeking some things and other people are seeking others. And I think it's appropriate at this point to start having the public conversations. If the motion is made to go forward, I think what I would like to see, in addition to obviously keeping it on our agenda, is I would like to see a commitment for a special meeting to be held to discuss this one thing, some sort of public interactive forum where we would invite town meeting members, as Ned Corcoran did for this, and I'd like to see that commitment. Obviously, we have our own public process to go through that would be standard for an article that is going before town meeting anyway. But I think it is, this is a conversation that we've been dancing around on the edges of, a larger conversation, and this may be the time to bring it forward and see what we hear. It would certainly answer a lot of questions to have the conversation. So I am waiting for a way of wrapping this up, which means a motion of some sort.
So I'll move to put forward the zoning bylaw for non-conforming business uses in a residential district as currently drafted, with a minor revision to reflect a 4-inch caliper tree, 6-inch caliper tree instead of a 4-inch caliper tree.
All right, do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? All right. I believe,
Would you announce the vote?
oh, I'm sorry, it's 3 in favor and 2 against. So it passes.
Two against?
2 against, yes. I believe we have, do we have another runoff, or have we got names? Would
No,
you like
that
to
final
announce the
ballot
names?
managed to narrow things down.
Don't do first, second, and third, just
Oh,
give us
yeah.
the 3 names.
You
can do it in
we'll do it
alphabetical order.
figured it out by
it
now.
actually is in alphabetical order, and thank you very much to Julia for counting the votes.
Yes, thank you, Julia.
Michael Balfe, Richard Burke, and Elizabeth Miller
Okay.
were the top 3 vote getters. Those will be the recommendations for the Board of Selectmen for the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
If you could send me their email addresses, I will let them know that they've been nominated by the planning board. I'll email the town administrator, Anne Marie Fagan, and let her know for the Board of Selectmen. And obviously CC Cheryl and Katie so that they can be introduced, and let them know that the Board of Selectmen will have to approve the names.
It was a tough vote.
It was a tough
Yeah.
vote. Thank you, by the way,
Down to
for...
several wires.
Thank you,
So-
thank you for Julia for counting, and for Tim for organizing, and for Alex for suggesting the initial thing. Yes,
And thank you to the people who expressed interest in joining the committee.
yes, very good point. Little do they know. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so I think that hits everything on my list. Am I correct? There's nothing else? In that case, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, thank you very much. Just a reminder that February 8th will be meeting before town meeting. February 11th, 7 o'clock executive session, 8 o'clock our regularly scheduled meeting, okay? Yes?
Do we have a meeting on the 28th?